Well, hello everyone and welcome. Glad to have you with me today. We're going to have a really interesting excursion this morning, and trying to get all of there we go. I got everybody up and running. Had to get Instagram going this morning. So, well, I welcome you to this Wednesday morning, the 7th day of May, 2025. And we got some really interesting topics that we're going to be covering today. As you saw at the intro, Perry Stone is out again. And we're going to be listening to, going to be taking a look at some of his videos, couple of his new videos, and referring to the dogs barking. And before we get too much further into this, going to bring up our good old fair use disclaimer here that shows what we're using. It's going to be on be pulling off some interviews, and I'll go ahead and say, starting off, the interviews that I'm using is Julie Royce, and when she was interviewing Jonathan and Susie Lamb, and you'll understand more of when I get Perry Stone going, and what old Perry has to say. And I'm going to start out with why one main reason why that I'm going to cover Perry Stone and his latest comments. Just a real quick, you have to lay a foundation so you understand what the message is about. I mean, whenever you have a pastor on Sunday morning, he lays the foundation before he gets into his message. And that's something that I learned. And I learned that from, believe it or not, Perry Stone. I had my own road to Damascus moment. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But originally I was saved and baptized when I was 11. And I went to a Christian church, Disciples of Christ, and that's where I was baptized. And of course, as an 11-year-old, you understand. I knew who Jesus was. I knew right from wrong, but like so many, I strayed and did things I wasn't supposed to, and thought I'd made just a total and complete wreck of my life. But fortunately, I had a praying grandmother. Had two of them, actually. And you've heard me talk about my mama. So fast forward, one of these days, if I'm on with somebody, I'll give my testimony. But just sitting here by myself, looking at a camera and a computer screen, talking into a microphone here, kind of loses something in the translation. But I had my own road to Damascus moment, as I said, in 2018. And that's when I had a touch from God, that something I'd never experienced. And it wasn't like Paul. on his road to Damascus. But I was able to do things spiritually that I'd never done. Used to, I couldn't pray in public. I was terrified. Didn't know what to say, didn't know how to say it, nothing. And all of a sudden I could. And I can't tell you how many patients I prayed for in the back of an ambulance, how many families that I prayed with, prayed for. And that, that was my road to Damascus moment. Now, when I had that moment, I had absolutely no idea of where to go, what to do, where to learn, how to learn, nothing. And the Lord started me out just listening to the Bible, and an app, if you don't have it, is YouVersion on the Bible or of the Bible. It takes forever for an app to open. But you can see this. If you can go to my my camera focuses on it. Go to the App Store, download YouVersion. Excellent. It's an excellent version of the Bible. It's there's so many. You can download all the a majority of the translations. The three that I use predominantly is either King James, that's what I grew up with, New King James, or Amplified. And the Amplified, for someone that doesn't know it, does a real good job of explaining it. So fast forwarding a little bit, I had no idea who Daystar was, Marcus Lamb, Perry Stone, Jimmy Evans, Jensen Franklin, just to name a few. And the Lord led me to all the above. I started watching Daystar. I started watching Marcus. And I still watch Marcus when his program airs on Fridays at noon. I mean, irregardless of what happened to him, he's a man, he's a person just like all of us, subject to the same failures. And that's between him and the Lord. So, now he's with the Lord. So, and I look forward to the day that I can actually go up and say hi to him and tell him that I watched him. But I learned quite a bit from predominantly Marcus, Perry Stone, and Jimmy Evans, among others, but those were the big three. And hearing Perry, from what I've watched, everything I've watched of Perry, and seeing that he was a young evangelist. Him and Marcus goes back to when they were teenagers, him and Marcus and Jensen Franklin. But for the purposes of this conversation, I'm leaving Jensen out of it. I just mentioned because they were three traveling evangelists. And I purchased quite a bit of Perry's material. And I've put in my promos for this show, Perry, you need to be listening. You need to be watching me. You really and truly do. If you're not, you've closed yourself off. I'm just going to say this now. You've closed yourself off from apparent all reality. You turned off all your comments on anything on YouTube. You've never had them on. And you don't interact. You have your phone calls monitored by your staff. And all you live, and it's just apparent now that all you live in your own little world down there at VOE in Cleveland. You know, I was contributed to Perry's ministry, part of what they call the Perry Stone Strike Force. Not anymore. When Perry came out, bad mouthing everyone that was speaking the truth and supporting Daystar, which I can understand. He goes back to when before Daystar was even thought of. He goes back with Marcus before Joni was ever thought of. So I understand he has loyalty there. But you know, you got more of a loyalty to the Lord than you do to Daystar or do to Joni. And just to prove it, hang on just a second. Excuse me for leaning back here. One of Perry's latest books that I got, Unleashing the Beast, Perry Stone. Let's see. Here's another one. Perry Stone, 30 Prophecies. The Gold Bible Hoax by Perry Stone. And one that I'm almost sorry to hold up because my deepest sympathies. Honestly and truly, my deepest sympathies. But when I heard about the death, I believe it was your cousin, your book. Why did you leave us so soon? And I saw your video. You talking about her death. I saw where they showed the scene. I worked scenes like that. I can't tell you how many times. I've been with families. They're on the scene. And it is the most traumatic for the first responders. And I'm a first responder. I can tell you from experience that is the most traumatic event for us is to find somebody in critical condition or dead. So, you know, my sympathies. I know that's been a while back, but I did watch the video, and you know, I had tears because I can relate. But I even go back to, this was one of the first DVD sets that I got, the main event. And one of my favorites was The Coming Jezebel Spirit and Elijah Showdown. That one was one of my favorites. So, you know, that's why I wanted to go on and say this ahead of time and give a background of why that I'm saying what I am, and I'm not just running my mouth as somebody that doesn't know. But I do. And another book that we're going to touch on just a little bit is that one. And quite frankly, if you haven't got this book, do not buy it. I wasted my money and wasted my time getting it because 3/4 of it is a bunch of hooey, especially when you get in talk when she gets in talking about Dougie, and we're going to touch on Dougie. So, what almost I wanted to get kind of get that out of the way, um, because that I wanted to bring everybody up to speed of why that why this bothers me so much that Perry is taking the avenue that he is. And Perry, you're more than welcome to come on my show. I'll be more than happy to have you as a guest. I'll be more than happy to. Joni Lamb, I'm extending an invitation to you. I know you've received invitations from Julie Royce and Laura Lynn, and I'm extending an invitation to you as well. And I guarantee you, my questions will not be pre-approved, nor will they be softball questions like you got from Marcus Rogers that were pre-approved. Kind of reminds me of Joe Biden and his news press conferences. All the questions were pre-approved and the answers were in front of him. Yeah, I just dumped Joni in the category with Joe Biden. But sorry, hey, shoe fits, wear it. But something I want to get to real quick, just recently over this past weekend, this is going off just a tad, but I think we need to, because it fits in. And this is Jimmy Evans. Jimmy Evans was at his old church, Trinity Fellowship, and doing a sermon, and pretty much made what myself and a lot of others consider another heretical statement. Not that he's any stranger to heresy and blasphemy, because in that 90-minute beatdown session that him and Joni put Jonathan and Susie through, and all the heresy he threw and blasphemy he threw out there. So, hey, what difference does it make? Throw another little heresy out. So this fits in. Tell you what, I'm going to keep it on. I'm going to keep it on, and I'll just put this in. We're going to take a look at, going to take a listen to Perry Stone. And this is 2 of his latest videos. This is not all of them, but this is some of it. And I've cut out, because at the end of every video, he's got to hawk some book or DVD. And yeah, that's where I bought a lot of mine from. I watched Manifest and the little daily, the 15, 20-minute daily things that he puts out, and little infomercials. So I'm going to bring up and we're going to listen to what Perry has to say. Again, this is Perry Stone and the Dogs. And by the way, we're the Dogs. And Perry barking his double standards. What's good for me, but not for thee. Yeah. Okay. The other thing is Daystar canceled y'all remember Heart for the World? Daystar canceled Heart for the World. That they usually have in March. It's supposed to be their semi-annual fundraiser, that they turned it to quarterly fundraiser because for the last couple of years, they ran Heart for the World in June because Doug and Joni were off jet setting to places unknown. Of course, they had to pay for it, so whatever. We'll hound Mima and Papa for stuff. So let's start with Perry. Let's start with Perry Stone here, and then we'll listen to him, and I got a couple of clips of him, and then we'll move on into Jimmy Evans because Jimmy fits right in with this.
Mind or soul, because your condemnation of the sin you have done will kill your confidence, and when you don't have confidence, you cannot believe and have faith for an answer. So when you talk about this idea of accuser, the word accuser means to register a complaint in a court. And Satan is registering complaints in the court. But I want you to hear what I'm about to say because this is very important. And I'll talk about this later on in one of the other programs. One of the things that's happening now in the body of Christ, which is absolutely 100% wrong, it's not 10% okay, 5% okay, is for people, I see it all the time on YouTube channels, well, I don't know this person, I've never met them, but I want to tell you what's being said. You are a backbiter, you are a slanderer, you are a gossiper, you are a little Satan, and you are an accuser. You have no right talking about people that you don't know, that you don't really know the whole situation, that you're repeating news articles, that you only know one side of the story, you don't really know the facts. And I have people that will write me and say, you need to make a comment. Really? I need to make a comment? I have opinions like you have opinions. My comments don't mean a flip. I love my friends. I stand for my friends. I don't forsake my friends. I'm not like some folks that might be watching me. Boy, I would hate to have some folks, and I'm not talking about everybody. I got some great partners and friends out there, but I would hate to have some of you folks as friends because you are the friend as long as everything is going good, and if things don't go good, you become the backstabber. Woo! You don't need friends like that. So my point is simply this, that we are not to be little Satans, two-legged Satans walking around making accusations, because if that, and I'm getting off on another message, but if that accusation turns out to be completely false, which many times it can be, you have now done something that has broken one of the 10 commandments. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So you're the one in trouble, not the person you accused, okay? So I want you to understand something, that God listens to your words. He listens to your words. The idle words that you say, that you will answer at judgment. He listens to the words that you pray. So how do you overcome the accuser? You overcome the accuser. This is what the Bible says. They overcome Satan by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. So the blood of Jesus is what you go by when Satan is accusing you for sins that you have been forgiven of. You do not answer for sins that are under the blood of Jesus. You do not answer for sins that have been forgiven, that God has forgotten. People can still bring them up, but they're accusers, and that's their problem. They will answer at the bema, or the great white throne judgment, literally for that. So all of that's washed away and under the blood of Jesus Christ. What you have to do is keep your spirit right and your spirit pure, and let everybody else's work their own battles out, and you pray for them. Well, I wish I had more time because I was going to concentrate on that, overcoming by the word of your testimony, and didn't get all the message in, but I want you to watch this. One of the most important.
Okay, that's where he starts. One of the most important offers that I've made in the land. Yeah, I hear that on every video. Okay, love you, Perry, but oh my goodness, I still invite you, Perry. I still invite you on, but I'm gonna take a look here at Perry's talking about what we're doing. Ephesians. I got Ephesians 5 up here, and Ephesians 5:11, and have no fellowship with the unfaithful works of darkness, but rather expose them. That's the primary text of this verse that I'm showing. Paul's very explicit there. So we are to expose. No, you're not supposed to gossip, backbite. If it's a lie, no. You don't spread lies. Absolutely not. And I'm not going into unforgiven sin. That's the other thing that's something else you don't bring up. Because if you do that, you're under condemnation yourself. So there are things I could, you know, Perry had some stuff some years ago, but I'm not going there because that's something that I'm taking that he's addressed with the Lord, and that's over and done with. I'm not bringing up unforgiven sin. Now, if it was pertinent, I'd bring it up, but if it's not pertinent, no. So Perry's second comment here, and this refers to us as well. And this is the title of the
video. Hear what
video.
I'm about to say all the way to the end. Beware of the dogs. I'm going to give you scriptures to show you better beware of the dogs. Philippians chapter 3, finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you, to me indeed is not grievous, but for you it is safe. Beware of dogs. Beware of evil workers. Listen, here's another one. Revelation chapter 22, 14 through 15. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they might have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. For outside the city are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters and whoever loves and makes a lie. So you have the New Jerusalem that's come down to earth, and we don't have time to explain what this means, but on the outside are sorcerers, whoremongers, murderers, idolaters, and dogs. Now, is it talking about dogs? You see these pictures over here? This one over here looks pretty rough, or pretty vicious, I should say. Is it talking about these dogs? And listen to me carefully. In the New Testament, the word dog can be literal. This would be a literal animal, or it can be figurative, literal or figurative. Here's the literal interpretation. Luke 16, the dogs came at the rich man's gate and licked the sores that were on Lazarus, the poor man. That was a literal animal that was licking his sores. Matthew chapter 15, 26, Jesus told the woman who wanted her daughter healed, she was a Gentile, I cannot give the children's bread, that was representative of healing, to the dogs. Was he talking about feeding these animals? No. Back in Christ's time, among the devout Jewish people, a Gentile who was an uncircumcised person was called a dog metaphorically. It was a degrading term for Gentiles. And it's really interesting here that Jesus used this term because this is a woman from Lebanon who was a Gentile, and maybe he used it just to see what her reaction was. And she said, even the dogs want the crumbs from the master's table. And Jesus said, wow, what faith you have. So figuratively, it can be a literal animal, but literally it can be in the Bible, a literal animal, but figuratively it can represent different things. It can represent a Gentile in the New Testament. But here's another one, Philippians 3, 1 through 3. An unclean spirit is a person that is classified figuratively as someone who is a dog, because the Bible talks about the pig returning to the mire and the dog returning to its vomit. In a dream, for example, I've had dreams of very vicious dogs, and they ended up being a person who had a vicious mouth who was attacking with the words of their mouth. Now, here's some warnings about the dogs. Now, we're talking about not the literal dog, but the figurative dogs. Ephesians 5:11, have no fellowship with the unfruitful workers of darkness. Why on earth are people following people, maybe even on social media, who are absolutely fruitless? They're not winning anybody to the Lord. They're not helping anyone to get healed of their wounds. They're wanting to expose everybody who's been hurt in the past. They're wanting to bring up people's past that's been forgiven. Don't fellowship with the unfruitful workers of darkness. 1 Corinthians 10 and 20, have no fellowship with devils. And if you keep reading, he's talking about believers who sat at the table of devils, who were trying to sit at the table of the Lord and the table of the devils at the same time. And these were devilish people. 2 Corinthians 6:14, what agreement is light and darkness? What does a believer have to do with an infidel? They are two separate people. Now, when I speak of dogs, I think you figured it out by now. I'm not talking about your pet. We all love our pets. I've had dogs growing up. I remember most of them. And people have wonderful pets today. So I'm not talking about beware of your pet. Hello. Now this one, well, this herd behind me, maybe they're protecting their owner. I don't know. Look at this one over here. But that reminds me of some Christian's mouth. Oh, did I say that? Yes, I did. So here's what I'm saying. The dog in the metaphor is speaking of people who are vicious with the words of their mouth. If we look at the Revelation scripture at the end of that verse, after mentioning without or dogs, it's very strange he says that, but he says it. He then says, and those who love and make a lie. Now this is puzzling, but I'm going to tell you something. There are several scriptures in the New Testament that says people would lie on other people in the last day, and they would lie in hypocrisy. Now what lying in hypocrisy means is this. They really know they're not being totally truthful. They're just repeating something without vetting it, but they know it may not be truthful, but they go ahead and do it anyway, but they do it in hypocrisy. And the hypocrisy is, well, it's probably not true, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's going to hurt the person. It also means for a person to criticize someone else when they have stuff in their own life. It goes back to the mote in the eye and the beam in somebody's eye. They're trying to pull a mote out of somebody else and expose somebody's mote. And they have got, as Jesus said, a log in their eye. And so all these things are interesting because let me tell you something. They've done studies at some of the leading universities that the human brain is very interesting because the brain can hear something so often that it's totally untrue that it actually, the brain is tricked into believing that it's absolute fact. And I just want you to understand, you better be careful. You better be careful trying to talk bad about other people when there's things in your closet and there's things that you did years ago that you prefer people not to bring up. And people do it all the time. And so here's the story I'm going to give, and this sums up what I'm trying to tell you. Years ago, in the state of West Virginia, my granddad, Stone, who was my daddy's dad, and his...
Okay. Rather than continuing that, I just got the main part of the clip. You know, you can go to Perry's YouTube channel and watch it. Of course, the comments are turned off, or at least they were when I was looking at that. But I think you all got the gist that those of us talking about what's going on in the church are dogs. Woof, woof. Okay. I'm not sitting here telling lies on other people to hurt them. Absolutely not. I go on what information that I've had that firsthand, what I call firsthand testimony, or what's referred to as firsthand testimony. And the firsthand testimony, as we know, came from Jonathan and Susie Lamb. So it's not talking about, we're not telling lies on it. What we're doing is advocating for wrongs that have been done. We're advocating for a child that has been harmed. And yes, based on the testimony, yes, I do believe that a child was harmed. Now, officially, we have to say alleged because it's an allegation. But hearing that, and I'm going to play some of the testimony. I'm going to play their part of their interview with Julie Royce. And the reason that I'm doing that is I went back to the source. I didn't pull interviews from other channels. I could have, but I went back to the source, the source that broke the story. because that's the reporter that Jonathan and Susie had been communicating with from back in the summer of 2023, 2024. I don't remember exactly when it fully started, but that's where that's where I'm going to. That's where I'm going to, and this is where Jimmy Evans and his I'll bring in Jimmy and his heretical statement, because what I'm dealing with here is facts. I'm not going to throw you all a bunch of garbage. Absolutely not. That's not going to benefit. It doesn't benefit you, and it sure doesn't benefit me. You know, I've dealt in facts for so many years in law enforcement, and I'm continuing to deal in facts doing this. And it just, you know, when you tell God you're available, it's amazing what he's going to have you do. So I'm going to bring Jimmy up here for the last little bit of his sermon, and listen to what he says about spiritual abuse. Now Jimmy Evans is spiritual abuse in the same sentence. Yeah, take a listen to him.
And staying accountable. And so let me read the scripture, Romans 13. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities. There is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. Rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise for the same. For he is God's minister to you for good. If you do evil, be afraid. He does not bear the sword in vain. He is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore you must be subject, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this you pay taxes. They are God's ministers, attending continually this very thing. Render therefore to all that is due, taxes to whom taxes are due, customs to whom customs, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. And so it says here, all authority is from God, and it's God's minister to us, secular authority, not just spiritual authority. Well, what if authority tells me to sin? I don't sin. Okay. Any authority that's telling me to sin doesn't represent God. Even then, I'm going to be careful of my attitude toward authority. What if authority is abusing me? Don't ever let anybody abuse you on any level, spiritual, at work, you know, any level. Don't let anybody abuse you. Get away from it. Complain. Call the police. Don't let anybody abuse you. But
well, Jimmy, should that's a good way to freeze him. Well, Jimmy, should Jonathan and Susie have called the police when for that 90 minutes that you stood there in the room with Joni and Doug and did nothing but say submit almost 100 times? That Joni's the voice of God and that you submit? Okay. I'll put him back on here. But I try and run this in context so you can see the whole segment from start to where I end the clip.
all authority is imperfect except for God. And a policeman may pull me over. I may know that policeman. I may know that policeman's a knucklehead. I may know that policeman's family. I don't like any of them. But that policeman still represents the authority of God in my life. It's not a personal issue. It's an issue. And so it's saying here, submit to authority. Did you know that sometimes God will tell an authority something he won't tell you? Just for the purpose of making sure that you know you won't get everything God has unless you're submitted to authority? Let me give you the example. Jesus, it says he was 12, but he was turning 13. He was becoming a man. He was bar mitzvahing. And his family had come to the feast, and they were going home, and Jesus didn't tell his family, but he stayed behind. It was Home Alone version 1. Okay. So Jesus stays back in Jerusalem. His family leaves. After several days, they notice he's not there. And they come back to find him. And Mary finally finds him in the temple, And he's talking to all these high priests and everything. And she's saying, honey, what in the world are you doing? And Jesus very indignantly said, Mother, I must be about my Father's business. He was wrong. The Son of God. God had disclosed, God the Father, that he co-parented
Now, you heard that. He just called the Son of God wrong. Well, here's the rest of it.
Jesus with Mary. He disclosed something to Mary he didn't to Jesus. Jesus was not in rebellion. He didn't sin. He was very sincere. Mary took Jesus home for 17 years. Then at the wedding of Cana in Galilee, Jesus was 30 years old. He wasn't ready to go into the ministry. Mary told him to help him make wine. Jesus said, woman, what do I have to do with you? No, Mom, get off my back. You know, I'm a carpenter. What do I have to do? And Mary's saying, no, honey, your ministry starts here today. Twice, his mother told him something he didn't know. Authority, God is going to use authority in your life sometimes to say something to you that you don't know on your own. By the way, when Jesus went into the ministry, for 3.5 years he ministered, Jesus said in John 5, I do nothing unless I see my Father doing it. There was never a day in the life of the Son of God he wasn't submitted to his mother Mary or God the Father. And so I want to be a submitted person. I want to be a wise person. I want to be a teachable person. I want you to bow your heads with me if you would.
Okay, now you all heard the whole thing there. He's saying that Jesus was wrong. Yeah, Jesus was in the temple. You know, if I'm not mistaken, a Jewish boy, when he turns 13, I believe he's considered a man. And my brother-in-law is Jewish, and I attended my nephew's bar mitzvah not too long ago. And that was seeing the bar mitzvah that has been done for thousands of years was really interesting, especially carrying the Torah and then reading from the Torah. And he did an excellent job. I don't have clearance to say his name, so I'm not going to use his name here. But that's when a boy became a man. And you know, yeah, I've read that. I'm sure we all have that. You know, Mary and Joseph left Jerusalem, and you know, they finally realized Jesus wasn't with them. Of course, now being a parent, and in today's world, we know where normally we know where our kids are, especially if we've gone on a trip, and if you don't have the complete riot going on in the back seat, then if it's quiet back there, parents, exactly what I'm saying. If you got kids and it's quiet and it's not nighttime, you go look. Moms, you know what I'm talking about. You go look and find out what are they into? Have they set the house on fire? What are they doing? So I don't know, I don't know how it was 2,000 years ago. Obviously the culture is completely different now than it was then. But the boy became a man. And Jesus was about his Father's business. Now, do I have an insight into that? Did God give me an insight into it? No, he didn't. I'm as curious as probably everyone else, but Jimmy's saying that God was co-parenting Jesus with Mary. I doubt it. I believe that Jesus all along knew that he had a mission, even from a small child. Now, obviously, the Gospels do not talk about Jesus's childhood, and an answer. And I asked that question too, and I think the general answer that was agreed upon was because the Gospels were more focused on Jesus's ministry and Jesus's sacrifice than they were as Jesus the little kid. Because as wild as everybody gets, you're going to be focused, everybody would be focused on Jesus as a kid and completely ignore what he did as an adult. So you keep it focused, you keep it on the mission. So Jimmy was talking about back to what Jimmy was saying. About abuse. Well, I'm not going to play a whole lot of this, just some. And I'm sure that you've heard this. So just a matter of getting to it.
You're like my sister. He's like my big brother. You know that. And so he said, I'm not going to just say yes with this. And so, but other people in my county, with my years of
So
ministry.
she's been very submitted to me in many circumstances, but in this situation with Doug, totally. And we have very difficult conversations, and she never pushed back. She never rebelled, and neither did Doug.
And there are other people in my life that I trust, that I sought their counsel. And that's what I did when I got your email, because I was mad. I knew my flesh was responding. I didn't want to respond out of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I waited and called you and then talked to these other people. And the other people that I talked to love my kids, but they're just
Can
like,
you tell me who they are? I'm just curious.
Huh?
Can you tell me who it
You're
is?
gonna ask them first.
let
Oh,
me,
you have to ask them. Okay. Gotcha.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Let me ask. Well, I can tell you, Sean Bowles has been very,
Sean Bowles is the prophetic one.
been very encouraging to me about the whole thing. And there are other prophetic people. Chris Reed has been very encouraging to me. Nate Johnson has been very encouraged to me. Billy Burke, totally. I mean, these are all prophetic people that we trust. And so I just want y'all to have a relationship with Doug and to know him like I know him, and to be around him and to let go of all this other stuff and to trust me. That's all I want. I don't want to have to be the bad guy. I don't, but I will.
I think on a personal note, he's married to you. I wanted time to just let it happen naturally. I wasn't pushing anything. When it comes to Daystar, I just wanted to do my little job, serve God in that way, and go home to my kids.
If you respect and honor me, and you respect and honor him,
But reading feedback is not that, though, to me. That's like,
reading feedback and somebody saying something nice is nothing in light of everything we talked about. And we got to get past that.
I mean, that's not like asking us to say that we support this marriage. We've been wanting to be in support of it. Like, it's not asking us to lie.
And you have to support the marriage now. We're married. You have to support it. You can't say, I'm sorry, I don't support your marriage, Mom. That doesn't work here, does it?
No,
It just doesn't work.
Well, I mean,
you can do that on a personal level, but not you can't import that into this ministry.
we don't. That's the thing. They do the show.
yeah, I haven't. Like, I haven't publicly said like what I said. I've kept my feelings to you in a letter. Like, I wrote to you.
Y'all have talked to other people. You've talked to other people.
We've only talked to friends.
Close ones that we trust for prayer.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you're talking to. You're in disagreement. You do not agree with Doug being her husband, and
He is our husband.
what you're not saying is as damaging as what you're saying, because you didn't read that comment.
I'm not going to fake a personal relationship. It has to happen naturally.
Well, wait, you're telling her what has to happen.
No, you
I'm
can't.
telling you
She's the boss.
I'm
She
telling
tells
you
what
my
to do.
boundary, and
She
you make
tells
your
you-
decision from there.
I'm saying to you, Susie, very simply, if you can't do what she wants, you have to go. It can't be both ways.
I didn't ask it to be both ways. I'm
But
here.
what you're saying is, you're saying, at Daystar, I'm going to do my job and go home, and I don't want to be told anything other than that. Well, that's not how it works. Your job is to please her. When she has a smile on her face, you did your job. Your job is not to come and talk about God and go home. Your job is to come and please the boss and go home. So she's not pleased. She's not happy. So it just can't keep going on like this. It's been too hard. And again, she asked me the other day on the phone, she said, do you think I'm overreacting or being too hard or whatever? And I said, Joni, you have been incredibly gracious with your children through this whole situation, but this has to stop. I've tried to be gracious with you. And all I'm saying is, it's got to stop. It's got to stop right now. This cannot continue for your own good, for your children's good, because you're all torn up about it. And so Daystar Network is going to go forward with her at the helm. And you're either with her or you're not. And when I say with her, I mean 100%. I'm not saying 99%. I'm not saying that you sit and don't talk about Doug or whatever. You've got to talk to Doug. You've got to talk about Doug. You've got to read whatever she wants you to read on the air. And if that's something you can't do, I respect you if you leave, but not if you stay. I want you to stay and submit. But if you can't, it's a simple decision. And she will fire you. I'm just telling you, she will.
I can't prepare for anything. I just have to be honest, and then the decision's in your hands.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah.
Simple,
But I
simple.
mean, the ball's not in my court, it's in your court. It's
How?
in your court.
I just, like I said,
You submit to my authority or you don't.
yeah,
and
like
that's-
whatever I say to read, if I'm not comfortable, then I have to stick with my convictions.
Well, whatever you read, if you don't agree with the viewer's comment, it's not your right to agree or disagree with it. If a viewer has a comment about me or you or anybody else, it's a nice comment, that's a good thing to read it. That's not a bad thing to have anything to do with you. You're reading a viewer comment. That's
I'm
what-
representing it. It's a lie.
You're not
It's real.
representing
I'm,
any- it's
I'm
not a
reading
lie.
it out.
It's
I'm
not
reading
a lie.
it.
It's not a lie.
It's a lie if I say something
It's
that
not,
I don't
it has
believe.
nothing to do with you.
If
So
I
you
say
don't
something,
believe
I don't
Doug's
believe
a
it.
good man.
It
No,
has-
I'm not gonna just
It
read
has
fluff.
nothing to do with you. It is a viewer comment. It's not a Susie comment. It's a viewer comment.
I can't go against my convictions in that, and I
Well, then
Not
don't
challenging.
come back then.
okay.
You're gone. You're
Okay.
fired.
That's
If
right.
you can't read a nice comment about Doug, I don't want you here.
Yeah.
You won't do the green room. You won't do anything.
Okay.
Okay.
What about you, John?
I'm just going to seek the Lord and I'm going to pray.
Yeah, well,
I love you and respect
There's got to
you.
be a heart change, and you see there's not.
Yeah.
No, I
And
definitely.
I knew if there wasn't a heart change, then nothing would change. Until the heart changes,
I think you guys have got yourself in a position to what you are going to down this hill. This is the hill you're going to down. I think that's the
I'm just
choice.
doing what
I
God
just
tells
said
me to do.
I'm not saying I'm not or I'm yes or no. I'm just saying I'm just going to pray. You'll know if I read a comment or not. Like if I'm going to apply, if I'm going,
Well,
if
John-
I come on and I say I'm not going to read the comment, you'll know my decision.
No,
So-
that's not what's going to happen. That you're not getting back on the set until she knows that you're submitted. It's not a matter of you doing what you want to do when you want to do it. It's a matter of her knowing today that you're submitted to her and that you trust her and you're willing to do what she says. And she may give you longer than that. She may give you till tomorrow or whatever. But all I'm saying is, this is not a religious process of you going home and praying. This is a process, very practical process of you telling your boss whether you're behind her or not, whether you'll submit to her or not. Now you're spiritualizing all of this, and all of the scriptures behind her, not behind you. She's the authority. She's your mother. Either way. And so in your next job, if you leave this job and you go to your next job, trust me, whatever boss you have, you're going to disagree with 18 times more than you ever have heard. And you're going to have to submit it. They're going to fire you again. And so in the real world, because you've lived in a bubble, Daystar is a bubble. It is a wonderful spiritual place to work, and you've lived in a bubble. In the real world, this crap doesn't fly. And you can't defy your boss and get away with it the way you have her. She's been incredibly gracious with you, but it's all over. And so as far as I'm concerned, no response today is the bad response. And I'm not saying on her behalf, I'm saying on my behalf. If you can't submit today, it is a spirit, and it is going to continue. And it can't continue. It has to be over, Jonathan. Either you submit or you don't. Now, Susie's saying no. Your wife is saying no.
I didn't say I would not submit. To me, submission is doing the job that is ministry and not having to fake a relationship
You're
with
telling
Doug.
the boss what your job is. You can't do that.
Faking a relationship with Doug is part of the Daystar job. That's not.
Reading a comment about Doug is part of the job.
I cannot go against my convictions.
No, you listen. You said no. I respect that. But then I look at you, Jonathan, and I say, what about you? Because your wife said no. And you're saying you want to pray about it. There's been a lot of prayer. There's been a lot of conversations. It's time to make a decision.
Well, we just had this meeting today, so I think it's fair to be able to give
No,
you
I
time
think you need to
process
tell
things.
me now. You either submit or you don't. You either submit or you don't. I'm not playing the game any longer. I'm not letting you go home and pray about it and think about it. Susie's made her decision. Now you make your decision.
I haven't had, you didn't give me
I'm not giving.
any foreknowledge of this meeting of, like I have to make a decision.
She doesn't have to. You always put the burden on her. The burden's on you. You're the employee. She's the employer. The burden's on you. And you have to make a decision.
So off the show or just off vice president, like he's losing his job? Like we have to clarify that.
Well, submission is for all those things, Susie.
I'm
It's
just
not
asking.
just for on the show.
You said you might have to take some time off the show before in the meeting, so I'm clarifying that for Jonathan.
I said, though there are consequences to this kind of rebellion. So I think been through that. So either you say, yes, Mom, I'm submitted to you. I may not agree with you on anything, but I'm submitted to you. Or you say you're not. It's one or the other.
Just give me 24 hours to pray about it. That's all I ask, kindly, so respectfully.
I'm not going to give you 24 hours. You give me an answer now. You either submit it to me or you're not.
I'm submitted to you in every aspect. The only aspect where there is some consternation in my spirit is having to read something that praises your marriage in front of our live worldwide studio audience. That's the only thing. There's been nothing else that I've been difficult about. I've submitted you. I've been an incredible son. I've been an incredible employee. I haven't had any problems with you or leadership. It's just with this error. This marriage, there's just been
First off, this is a viewer comment. So the fact that you're using that as the catalyst as to why you can't, do that is really speaks to a much deeper issue in your heart. That's just an excuse.
Okay, I'm sure we've heard that before, and just the sheer backing him in a corner. It was just horrendous. So, I can understand him, Jonathan, and I agree with Jonathan's standing by his decision, standing by the word. And I've got a video coming up, but it's going to remind you all just a little bit of, about Joni and, I was mentioning that they canceled Heart for the World because of the financial questions and the financial management. So you remember Perry was saying that we talk about stuff we don't know, talking about things we don't know anything about. We do, because it's very plain. That's exactly what what this program is about, is a rebuttal to him. And just reminding everyone of what's going on. I mean, we're called accusers of the brethren. Now, there's one accuser of the brethren, and that's Satan. And we've been tasked with pointing out the wrongdoers. Doesn't mean we're perfect. It just we're supposed to show what's going on. Now, obviously, I don't have time to go into everything that's going on because, oh my goodness, we'd be here all day to touch on to touch on Michael Brown. Yeah, I'll comment about that. Um, I guess his group cleared him to go back to ministry. Well, I'm going to equate that to the fox guarding the hen house. You have a bunch of people, bunch of people that say, yeah, yes, men. Oh, it's okay. Sexual abuse. Okay. Well, that's one of the main reasons we're here. It's less about Jonathan and Susie being fired from Daystar. It's about a 5-year-old child that was hurt, that was abused. But I'm going to go here and just remind you all of all of Joni's properties that, and I know some of them that they had before. The house they had in Montgomery, Alabama, and then there's a house in South Carolina. Okay, fine. And then, when they moved to Dallas, there's that house that they bought. All right, they've hung on to, Marcus was a very shrewd businessman. He was. And he hung on to those houses, investing in property. But what I'm getting at is what's going on now. So let's get this going.
For years, the public has known that Daystar TV president Joni Lamb lives a life of great wealth and luxury. But last month, the Trinity Foundation reported that Lamb owns 6 residential properties in 3 states worth about $11 million, revealing just how wealthy the Christian TV mogul is. Now, the Roy's report has confirmed that Lamb owns a 7th home in a 4th state, bringing the worth of her real estate holdings acquired through Christian ministry to $11.7 million. Joni's $2.9 million home in Colleyville, Texas. Joni's main residence is a $2.9 million home in Colleyville, Texas. The 7,358 square foot home boasts 5 bedrooms and 5 baths. It sits on more than 2 acres and includes an in-ground pool and spa. An affidavit Trinity Foundation shared with TRR shows that Joni and her late husband Marcus Lamb owned the home in 2012. A 2025 warranty deed granting Joni property from Marcus's probate estate lists the Colleyville home as Joni's mailing address. Joni's $3.9 million home under construction in Colleyville, Texas. In March 2022, Joni purchased a 2-acre lot in a gated community in Colleyville with numerous multi-million-dollar homes, according to a warranty deed Trinity Foundation gave to TRR. According to Redfin, the initial property was worth $1.5 million. However, architectural plans filed for a Colleyville building permit show the planned new home on the property will be 9,738 square feet and valued around $3.9 million. Pictures obtained by TRR show much of the exterior of the home is completed, though construction is not done. Joni's $2.9 million Florida beach home. In September 2023, Joni and her new husband, Doug Weiss, bought a 3,030 square foot Gulfront condominium in Miramar Beach, Florida for $2.9 million, according to a warranty deed provided by the Trinity Foundation. According to Redfin, the 4-bedroom, 4-bath home was designed with the help of one of the top design firms in the area. Everything in this unit is top of the line with no expense spared, the listing states. All the furnishings, accessories, window treatments, bedding, and artwork are all coordinated for each individual room. The home also has a Gulfront balcony with over 350 square feet of space, and the building in which it's found has a gated entry with semi-private elevators leading to a private foyer private heated pool and hot tub, and a majestic waterfall. Joni's $814,000 home on Brazos River. Since 2012, Joni has owned a home on the Brazos River in Granbury, Texas, according to a warranty deed TRR obtained from the Trinity Foundation. According to Redfin, the 3,061 square foot home, designed with every comfort in mind, is worth $814,301. It has 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, granite and custom cabinetry in the kitchen, and a private dock. Joni's $520,000 home in Grapevine, Texas. In 1991, Marcus and Joni Lamb bought a 2,167 square foot home in upscale Grapevine, Texas, according to a warranty deed the Trinity Foundation shared with TRR. The home hasn't changed ownership since, and according to Redfin, it is worth $521,452 today. The home was listed for rent for $3,000 a month in February 2024. Joni's $365,000 home in Macon, Georgia. In 2022, Joni purchased a newly constructed home in Macon, Georgia. A tax assessment notice provided by the Trinity Foundation shows. The 2,108 square foot home has 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. Redfin estimates the home in a beautiful gated community with designer finishes is worth $364,606. Joni's sister and brother-in-law live in the home, Joni's son, Jonathan Lamb, told TRR. Joni's $259,000 home in Taylors, South Carolina. A 2024 tax document shows that Equivest Financial LLC, in the care of Marcus Lamb, owns a modest home in Taylor, South Carolina. The 1,404 square foot home has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. According to Redfin, the home was initially bought in 1982 and is worth $259,239. It was listed for rent in June 2024 for $1,695 a month.
Okay. You know, my issue is the houses in Florida, a custom house with no expense spared. Really? You run a ministry on donations. I know you get business funds from your programmers, but you've had 23 programmers leave. Russell Johnson, Pursuit TV, was the latest that left. You know, it's really sad that they don't come out and say why they left. Although some of them, it's cause of money. I know Jesse Duplantis came out and said, yeah, God's directing us in another direction with money and all this. How Jesse's one. Oh my goodness, Jesse Duplantis. That he could sell a freezer to an Eskimo. I mean, at the North Pole. And don't get me started on the devil himself, Kenneth Copeland. Worth over $750 million. Think about that, people. $750 million. An evangelist. Man, that's a lot of donations of me, mom, papa. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Support your local church. Support your local church. You know, ministries that support a ministry that files a 990, a ministry that files something with the IRS. And I'm going to play a video here in a minute that Joni is in an interview with Marcus Rogers. That was a joke. Saying that a third party accounting firm every year does an audit of Daystar. Really? Where is it? If you're so dang accountable, then publish it. Quit hiding behind your church exemption. You're not a church, Daystar. You're a business. You're a television network, a worldwide television network. And I just wonder how long it's going to be before you have to start selling commercials. Because satellite time's not cheap. Cable time's not cheap. And with your programmers leaving, 23 left. I know you're down over $2 million, $2.5 million, if not more this year because of that. Okay. Like I said, what I'm using is the interviews with from Julie Royce with Jonathan and Susie, because Julie was the first, the Royce report was the first media outlet to break the story. Therefore, the most accurate. I'm not saying that anybody else isn't accurate. Don't get me wrong. No. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm going back to the source. You ever heard, you get it from the horse's mouth? Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm going back to the source, the original source, and playing these videos.
I would be glad to talk to you if Pete's lawyer would release me to do that, but I haven't received that yet. So maybe at some point Pete's lawyer will, and then we can see the whole test.
Yeah. I think for me and Jonathan, we just keep coming back to this. We are not after Pete's blood. We're not after Pete. I truly believe in law enforcement, and I trust them to do their job. Yeah. What we brought to the light when we were informed about that Marks and Joni covered it up, right, and the injustice done to us, we want justice. Yes, the police are, they have their thing, right, and we're not after Pete. They can do what they want. Pete can do what he wants with that. Right. We care about, justice being done, but this was all about the wrongdoing from Marks and Joni covering it up instead of doing the right thing. So now them making all these stories up, yeah, is still going down the wrong path instead of just, yeah.
Well, and I do remember from day one, as much as you want justice for your daughter, you told me that until she has what's called an outcry, until she's able to talk about this, where she's been shut down, that justice probably won't happen. It may be very delayed until she's able to talk about it. There's not too much that law enforcement even can do at this point.
Well, they're hopeful because if we could start counseling again soon, we want to give her a break and we'll start counseling. So anything could happen. We don't know.
But when you came forward to me, what I heard you say is, this is more, the reason we're coming public is because of the way we have been treated, because of the way our daughter has been treated.
100%. That's it. This culture has to change. Every little voice matters. You're not going to silence a voice because the $1 billion ministry is more important. I believe that's why God gave us the courage to come forward and talk about this. We truly wanted, I wanted to run away and not deal with these people and go somewhere safe. Why would we take the harder road? Why would we put ourselves to public scrutiny or any of this? We fasted, we prayed, we felt truly God said, you're going to speak, because I believe God's heart is bigger than just our story, and he's making a change in the body. And these people have to be held accountable to never do these things.
And, we don't care about what we could lose. This is about doing the right thing and setting that the truth needs to be the truth, and this should never happen regardless of the size of the organization or the ministry. Nothing is too big to cover up or put like a victim, to keep them quiet or not allow the truth to come out because you're trying to protect the image of the organization or the church.
Okay, I appreciate, Mr. Royce, thank you so much for putting this out there. I had an order that that was going in, but kind of jumping around here a little bit, because it kind of puts everything in context. That they're telling why they came forward. It was because of their daughter. And I'll just say, and I don't think I'm wrong. on this, had they not been defending their daughter, then then I don't think Joni would have and Daystar would have gone the way they went with the non-disclosures that they didn't sign, and that's why they're gone. Bottom line, that's why they're gone. It's either sign the NDAs, or you're gone. And you remember a little while ago, Jimmy Evans talking about spiritual abuse. If you're experiencing abuse, spiritual abuse, verbal abuse, leave, call the police. And then we heard Jimmy Evans doubling down on spiritual abuse and verbal abuse, which you can go back. I'm not going to go through and play those videos. I mean, we've heard them. If you want to go back, they're on Miss Roy, on the Roy's Report. But I've got one. I'm playing a little bit out of context here, but it kind of brings it into perspective.
Again, that Susie is the one that's in control. Again, that's the farthest thing from the truth. Susie has a very strong personality. She is very strong with her convictions, and that's what you saw in that meeting. She was even stronger than me when it comes to standing for her conviction. She was willing to walk away right away, whereas I was kind of wrestling with like, oh man, is this really, like, I need to pray about it, and so I asked to have 24 hours to pray about it. But she has a boldness, and that's a beautiful thing. It has nothing to do with her control over me. And sometimes there are decisions that are made in a board meeting where I would go and talk with her and we'd discuss it together, and I might come back out with a slightly different opinion on how I view things. And they would say that, oh, she just completely twisted things. And
was it me or was it you in your prayer time?
It's us together processing and being able to figure out like what the right thing is to move forward. And so that, again, when you're in that board meeting and you're in that position where you have three very domineering personalities, 2 or 3, depending on how you were in the meeting, trying to force you into a certain route, sometimes they can beat you into submission, and you kind of need to get away to process and be able to reconfigure. And so they would say I would go back home and completely change my mind, and it was because of Susie. But no, it's because I was in that controlling environment.
But then she also said that Marcus also had these concerns, and that is
that's not true at all.
Opposite.
No, my dad never said one thing about Susie being controlling.
But not just that, like the family knows. They know my personality, and they always had a problem with me laughing too much.
Susie's always been the fun-loving, like, carefree person. Again, all these issues only started after my mom got married to Doug. So, like, Doug is the common denominator for all of this.
Well, I'll just say this. So, obviously, everyone knows I don't have a controlling, strong person. I'm strong with my convictions, and that's about it. Everything else, your
convictions, your love for God,
that's it. Yeah. Like Jonathan pays all the bills. He takes care of everything. I'm a carefree. I'm not high responsibility, strong person like that. And
okay, they said all of this started when Doug showed up. And, when Doug showed up, well, I don't have the video on here, but I was trying to put a lot of videos together. But Jonathan was, in a previous video, Jonathan was saying that Doug was counseling both Marcus and Joni when Marcus had his affair. So what better way to get inside her head than to have been talking to her, to be interviewing her? Doug always wanted his TV show. And we've heard and I didn't pull the video out on Doug saying that, God told him, oh, you don't pay for it, I'm going to take care of it. There's a lot of, keep in mind, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So, have a discerning spirit and know if it's, and know if it's the still small voice of God. Because if it doesn't jibe with the word, then it's not God. And video I'm going to play is Joni's being interviewed about her book, Through the Storm. And she's talking about Doug. And listen what she says about, I believe it's in this one, about what she says about God.
On through losing your late husband, Marcus. And for so many years, it was Marcus and Joni, Marcus and Joni. And now
Marcus and Joni.
yeah. And so, but now God's brought you another husband into your life. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I tell the whole story in the book because, again, there's a lot of commentary out there on that. But the short version is that when the Lord told me, basically the Lord said this, he said, get your
Well, I don't know if the audio shut off on that or not. Audio shut off on that or not. Well, actually, it did. Sorry about that, y'all. Don't know. Hang on, I got a technical issue here. I got my phone open because to chat on X, I have to use my phone. I don't know why that didn't. Yeah. I don't know why the audio is not working.
in the book because, again, there's a lot of commentary. Get your
Okay, well, I don't have time to dig that up and play it again. But she talks about that God brought Doug, God brought Doug in, and no. That wasn't God. So this is interview. I'm gonna skip around through it just because it's a long interview, and I don't want to take up all the time. I'm trying to keep this as short as possible, but there's a lot to go through here because what I'm doing is making a case for it using the evidence that's out there. And this is when Jonathan and Susie were interviewing with Julie Royce.
Statements. And what we haven't seen, and even Marcus said today, before he came in and interviewed her, there were stipulations, and she wanted to know if anybody was coming with them. It sounded to me the way that the interview went like it was scripted. Like probably, I don't know for sure, but it sounded like questions were approved beforehand. And the whole point of doing one of these interviews is you want to ask the hard questions, and the hard questions really haven't been asked. And we're gonna see that as we go through this. But again, there's that interview with Marcus. There's also an interview that was with what is it, the Table Talk program gals, and that one was not very rigorous either. But I'm going to play. I want to play some clips from those and give us an opportunity to talk about them. The first one will be concerning the abuse of your daughter and how that came to light. And again, there's one narrative that Joni has, another narrative that you told me, which, by the way, I will say has been consistent with me. And I have seen some changes in Joni's story. But let me play that, and then we'll talk about it.
My first knowledge of any abuse was in November of 2020. And Susie called me and said there had been an incident at my granddaughter's preschool. And she told me that something had happened where a little boy touched her and her friend. And so she called me and asked me, would I go to school with her? And I said, absolutely. So I went with her to the school. We reported it to the school. And of course, you know, I was there to encourage, and as I would for any child, but especially my granddaughter.
Of course, yes.
And so that was the incident that happened. And yet, you know, what's being written is just taken out of context. That was the incident that happened in 2020, and I was there. And Susie actually called me to go there.
Okay, so the word about you covering up, there's no truth to that.
You know, when I started hearing that, I thought to myself, what am I covering up? I've covered up nothing.
Right.
And so I never covered up anything.
So there seems to be some discrepancy there. She doesn't mention some of the things that you mentioned about there being a one-on-one meeting, but also she talks about going to the school. Respond to that. What did you hear?
So the night my child told me, that evening, it would have been around 5:30ish in the evening. When my daughter told me, I called. I was in shock, asked her a few questions, and I called Joni for help. And I said, I'm going to go to the police. And she said, no, bring her to me tomorrow morning, and then we'll go to the school. I was restless and not happy because I wanted to go to the police for some action. But I thought, okay, this is wise counsel. I'll listen. And, you know, many times I don't bring up extremely painful things to my parents because I really don't want to hurt my mom and dad. So I left that part out thinking I can tell them eventually. But so the next day, Jonathan, you took her to your mom.
Yeah, I took her to my mom's house. My mom wanted to meet with her privately to discuss what had happened.
Can I ask about that? Because what was the pretense that she gave for meeting one-on-one with your daughter?
She wanted to verify the same thing and get her to tell her that. And looking back on it now, I'm just like I shouldn't have left her alone with my mom. Just because I couldn't have imagined my mom could have done anything nefarious at that point. It was just hard for me to imagine that. But
we don't know if she actually did.
Well, all we know is that ever since that conversation with my mom, she hasn't opened up one word about it.
Yeah, so because I met them at the school.
Yeah.
We met the teachers. The teachers were peaceful, loving, calm. They said there's no male. Because my daughter the night before had told me, I asked her boy or girl.
Yeah.
And she said boy. Okay, how tall? I was trying to gauge an age.
And we'll break in here for just a second where Jonathan's saying that once the victim spoke with Joni, she's become silent. That's called witness tampering. That's witness tampering and intimidation. That's also damaging to a child. And what grandmother, I've got to go back. What grandmother, true loving grandmother, would do something like that? Well, a grandmother that's trying to protect a $1 billion empire and is inside a little bubble, like Jimmy Evans was saying that Jonathan had lived inside a bubble. Yeah. And you might as well say it's a cult because you do what you're told. I mean, it's bottom line, but I'm going to hush and we'll go back to the video here.
Maybe. And so she said taller than daddy. So I said, I didn't know what leading questions were. I said, did something happen in the bathroom, in the cafe? And she's 5 years old. She's nodding along. She goes, yeah. I said, was there a friend who saw anything? Mm-hmm. So I'm maybe in real time texting, the family, trying to piece together. At this point, Daystar was not a consideration. I just wanted the truth. So when we go talk to the teachers, they tell us even security is female, which I knew. Everything was okay. And so and our daughter, this was the crazy part. She wanted to stay at school.
Right.
And so to stay at school, she started saying, oh, the boy's gone. Everything's fine. And so I started to process this with my core group, the family. Because, I'm scared to leave her there, but she wants to be there. She's happy. She has her best friends there. And there's no male. Now, this is very, very important. The school it was a preschool, a pre-K. The boys are aged 3 to 5. There are no big, strong boys. So I think it's so painful for them to even insinuate that a possibly 3 to 5-year-old may be more guilty than a grown man, Pete. Anyway, I'll refrain from that part right now. So that was the whole process in that short season when we went. So Jonathan and I went to the police after we filed, got good at counsel from them, and they did their due diligence. The police did what they had to do. There was no suspect, so they closed the case, rightfully so. I was sad because I needed answers, but I had to trust God with the timing. Even my mom and dad had to walk me through that process, so you have to trust God. And then we started noticing that she's happy at school, she's okay at home, she's not wanting to go to Daystar. So much so that we had to hire a nanny because she would not want to go. Now, working together with the family all the time, being on TV, there were certain times.
We'll stop here for just a second. Having a daughter that has had that happen to her and the behavior that they're talking about, they're spot on. The child will go where they're safe. I mean, there's no problem. If she was being victimized at the school, she would have been terrified of the school. This is what I want y'all to try and understand. And I just pray that, I'm sure there's somebody out there listening, that's watching, that either has been a victim, knows a victim. And if you do, you know what I'm talking about. If they're safe, they're going to go where they're safe. They're going to be happy. She's happy as a clam at daycare, at pre-K. No problem. Go to Daystar, terrified. As law enforcement, that tells me volumes. That tells me where the perp is. Tells me where to look for the perp. So I will hush and we'll get back into it.
We'd just have to take her, and then she would follow me to my studio. She didn't want to stay in the family green room anymore. But nothing was handled perfectly. It is messy. And that's how it was.
She doesn't mention the one-on-one at all in that first conversation. She does mention it on the second one. I'd like to play the second clip because what I'm noticing is that the story, as more things are coming out, is beginning to change a little bit.
So in 2020, there was an incident that took place at my granddaughter's school. And Susie called me and she said, will you go down to the school with me? And I said, absolutely. So we went together to the school. We reported it to the school, and my granddaughter had told her mother that a little boy had touched her and her friend inappropriately. Okay. And so that was never written about, that I went with her or that there was another little girl involved. And so Susie and I reported it to the school, and I talked to my granddaughter, and Susie had asked me to ask her what happened. And so I did, but my granddaughter didn't want to talk. So I didn't push it, but I was fully supportive of her. So that happened in 2020, and a police report was filed. Okay.
And you saw the interview. She didn't tell me that you went down with her to the school or anything like that. So
Right. I didn't get to see the whole interview, but I absolutely went to the school with her.
So that was interesting. She made it sound like she talked to after she went to the school, when clearly I took her to my mom's house. She went into the house to talk with my mom privately. And my mom confirmed that she said everything that she had told Susie about the abuse. So now she's lying to say that didn't actually tell her anything, and that happened after we went to the school. So she changed her story completely.
Yeah, she doesn't necessarily specify, but it does sound that way in the way that she says it. I went back and wanted to just quote what I wrote was, initially Susie thought the perpetrator was someone at her daughter's school, but she discovered the school didn't employ any men. It's not like we were trying to hide something. It was just very clearly a part of the narrative.
One of the reasons we didn't put a focus there when you were telling our story is because the school they keep pulling the school back into it to distract people. The school has no part in the cover-up story. The school was done, case closed, and moved on. Then different things started to rise up with people saying things to me and suspicions at Daystar. That's a whole other story. So every time they bring up the school, it's a distraction.
And there was no other, she says even here, another girl that was involved?
In conversations with my daughter at that point, because I was scared for her to go to school, there might have just been random conversations with my child, like, do you have a friend with you? Oh, yeah. She just was going along with everything I was saying because she was terrified. She did not want to get in. When other people got involved, when she was just talking to me alone, she was very graphic with what she shared about where she was touched with her body. But after that, she did not. And I'm learning that these are normal behaviors with children. You cannot blame a scared child.
Well, let's move on to the beach incident, because, and you've mentioned in the meantime, from this incident, which happened in November 2020, to what happened at the beach, which would have been in July, I believe, 2021, that there were things that happened that made you think that Pete, as we're calling him, may have been the one. He was, like you said, afraid to go to school and afraid to be around Pete, and you saw these behaviors. I'm going to play your mother, what she has to say about that, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond.
Fast forward to 2021, and we had our family retreat. There was nothing else said about that event happening. There was nothing said to my husband or myself, my late husband. And so we're at the beach, and on this particular day, my grandson was talking about his city view, because they're the two older grandchildren. They were up in a room. It was a long bunk room, and there was a bunk bed on one side, and then there was another bunk bed on the other side. And so my grandson was talking about his sister had the beach view and he had the city view. And so who they're calling Pete heard my grandson talking and said, oh, I like the city view. And because everybody else was saying they liked the beach view. Personally, I like the beach view. And so he said Pete was holding his 1-year-old child. And he said to my grandson, well, show me your city view. So they went up the steps. I was in the room, heard this, and went up the steps and proceeded to look out the window to see the beach view and then to see the city view. And at some point, my granddaughter was up there on her side of the room and put her bathing suit on. Well, downstairs, Susie said to my son, go check on. I remember thinking that's kind of weird, like, and the way she said it. And so my son went running up the stairs, and when he did, he saw that his daughter was putting on the bathing suit, and Pete was standing there holding a 1-year-old baby, and my 8-year-old grandson was there, and they were looking out the window at the city view. Well, Jonathan says, what are you doing up here? You know, she's putting her bathing suit on. Well, Pete turns around and said, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I got to stop here for a second. Now, picture this. I mean, I'm analyzing this from a law enforcement standpoint. Little girl wants to go swimming. Okay. Mom tells her, well, go put your bathing suit on. Well, in the meantime, this other group talks about going to the beach view or the street view or something like that. So now there's a young boy, Pete, holding a 1-year-old child. Now, 1-year-old child, get this. And they've all gone in the bedroom. They've all gone in the bedroom where this 5-year-old girl is buck naked, putting on a bathing suit. Now, in what context does that make any sense? Really? If I was back, if I was my old self, I'd be saying words that have to do with what you find out in the field with cattle or horses. Okay. I'm going to hush. Let's go back to it. But I was listening to that. The interview with Marcus Rogers is so full of manure that, oh my word, we could fertilize some fields with it. So, okay, here we go.
I'm so sorry, and comes downstairs. And it was just weird the way the whole thing went down.
I have no words. I have no words. Where do you begin? Everything is a lie. Everything is a lie. How would I just know? If he was on the 3rd floor, how would I just know to tell Jonathan to go up there? She was not anywhere.
This is the thing that's interesting to me is apparently your mother is omnipresent because she's on 3 different floors at one time, right? This is what I'm noticing. So
Thank you for helping me. You need to calm down.
that you're on the main floor, from what I understand, Susie.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I know this is hard to recount.
No, it's okay. I'm in shock. I did turn it on to listen to a little bit because it's too important. Does she not realize she's going to stand before Jesus? Jesus. Oh my gosh.
It's traumatic, I'm sure. Unbelievably so. But let me just break this down. She starts out on the main floor, right? Because Joni's overhearing a conversation between Pete and Israel on that 1st floor, your son. So she's on that main floor, supposedly. Tell me who was where at the beginning of this incident?
So I was in the main area because Jonathan and our room was over there on that 1st floor. There's a basement below where Marcus and Joni were. There's a game room area down there, and that's where they were. So we finished breakfast, and Pete had the baby. Again, my heart is to always protect the identity of a baby or a child that does not need to be mentioned. Obviously, they took that, and I thought they'd be happy, but it's okay. This innocent little life was there in one arm, and he was doing something in the kitchen, and I was talking to my daughter, and she said, Mommy, I want to go swim. And I said, okay, go upstairs, put on your swimsuit, come back to Mommy. And the second I said that, his eyes just kind of got big, and he goes, ah, and he started to follow her. Yes, that baby was right there, and he just started to follow. The baby was a non-factor. The baby was not fussy.
And let me pause right there. Where is your son?
3rd floor, in his bunk, minding his own business.
So he was not on the main floor having any conversation about city view, beach view, which the city view is a street, right? There's no view.
It was one little road. That was our view. One little road. There was nothing. They have to come up with colorful words: fussy baby, city view, beach view. None of those things. The truth is so simple. He saw her. He goes, ah, and he started to follow her up. And I felt such panic in her eyes because I just knew if it was me stopping it, they'd be like, Susie, look what you're doing again. And that's what, today they have to admit that he was caught in that room because of Jonathan's crazy reaction, like very strong. But all I can do is tell the truth before God. He followed her up there, panic set in my heart. And I told Jonathan and he ran. Joni and Marcus were in the basement. They heard nothing. There was no conversation. My son did not invite him up there. My son was not there.
And Jonathan is on which floor?
I'm on the first floor in our room. So our room is just on the other side of the kitchen. I was brushing my teeth when Susie came. She said, "Hey, Pete is volume." So I dropped my toothbrush and I ran up to the third floor. And I got up there. The first thing I noticed is I lock eyes on my daughter. She doesn't have any clothes on. And so immediately I start screaming, "What are you doing?" to Pete.
What is Pete doing? They're saying he's looking out the window in some of these.
Pete is by the window. Whenever I started to scream, obviously my eyes initially locked with. So I screamed, "What are you doing?" And he immediately goes to saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." At least 50 times. So he was not next to, he didn't have his hands on her.
So this entire time that this is happening, your mother is in the basement. She's describing events that are happening on the main floor, which is how peculiar it is when Susie comes to get you, Jonathan. And then when she's describing things that happen in the room, that's where Pete is, your daughter is. She's not even there. So she doesn't know if Pete's looking out the window or not looking out the window because she's not even there. She's 2 floors away.
Right, exactly.
And if I could, just address that if it's, if people want to say, well, if his hands were not on you, why are you making a big deal? I would like to explain the pattern because in 2020 on that beach, on a different beach vacation in 2020, our leadership retreat of Daystar, Pete himself told me that my child walked on him in the bathroom, full frontal naked, and saw him fully nude. At that point, I didn't do anything because obviously I checked on her and she seemed okay. It is weird.
Doors have locks, correct?
One time he's fully nude. Next time she's fully nude. We did talk to, I forget his position, but he was in the FBI and he talked so many things checked off the list. It's part of the grooming thing. Yeah. So it's like all we were asking is to get this looked at and not just play it off as like it's nothing.
So I want to play something because there's been just a really big deal out of the fact that I did not mention in my story that Pete was holding a 1-year-old baby that between interview number 1 and interview number 2 with Joni became fussy. But this 1-year-old baby, I didn't include it not because you didn't tell me, because you guys did tell me. In fact, I had it in my initial copy. And when I'm trimming my article, I trimmed it out because, again, I'm trying to make sure that any extraneous details aren't in there. I know you don't want to really include other children, but it was a non-factor. And what am I going to do? Interview the baby? This was a witness, but it's a baby. But you did mention that your son was in the room. And I'll just be honest. At the time that I was writing this, I went back, I went through all my notes. This part, it wasn't in Susie's account. It was in your account, Jonathan. And honestly, this is one of the things to me that speaks of authenticity. I interview a lot of people. When I interview 2 people about the same event, I often hear different things. And we have that in the gospel accounts. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John sometimes have different accounts of the same thing, and they mention different things. And actually, that's as I understand, and as I work, it's been my experience that that's actually a sign of authenticity, that you didn't get together to try to put together a story, but you're telling a story. But again, you did mention it, and I just want to play the audio from our interview. I'm pulling it. This is what you told me months before I reported my story. So you were not hiding a thing. So here it is.
So it's her bedroom, and it's just the 2 of them in there?
Yeah, it was, had his son in his arms whenever Susie had told her to go up to change into her swimsuit. followed up while he had his son in his hands. And then
His
Israel and
son's how old at this point?
he was just a baby, right? Less than a year.
Okay.
Or maybe a year. What year or less than a year? Israel was up there too. Israel and his son. So
did Israel ever say anything about what happened?
Yeah, I don't think he was really paying attention, or I don't know what he remembers exactly.
He was pretty young, right? I mean, how old is he?
He's actually home right now. He says he remembers it, but not totally. He doesn't remember that much about it. So I guess that was a little over 3 years ago now.
And how old would he have been then?
He would have been 8.
So, Jonathan, I mean, again, this was something you said initially, and that your son was in the room. Pete was holding a 1-year-old baby. I don't think that changes anything.
No, I don't think so either. That doesn't change the fact that it was totally wrong and inappropriate for Pete to follow up my daughter. To change.
So, what happened after this incident has also been drastically different between what Joni describes and what you do. So I'd like to play her version.
What happened was Marcus was alive, and so we just met together as a family. He talked to everyone, and clearly nothing happened.
Speaking of Pastor Marcus, first I want to say thanks for the opportunity. You've always been easy to talk to.
Yes.
Yeah. Just
very transparent.
Very transparent. And so I want to ask you, because Susie said that you and Pastor Marcus covered it up. Did you cover it up?
You know, Marcus isn't here, but I will just say absolutely a lie. I never covered up anything. I wouldn't cover up anything. Marcus didn't cover up anything. And so again, this is a narrative that was written by some low-level blogger who knows nothing, never heard the other side of the story, and is doing nothing but trying to destroy my family.
Sensationalize.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what she does.
yes,
Yeah.
and
well, the crazy part is that eventually we worked through that misunderstanding, and Jonathan and Susie ended up apologizing, and we prayed together. I mean, and it was a done deal.
Right.
And so the timing of later this coming out or being pulled up again out of the ashes when there's no validity to it just blew my mind. I'm like, what in the world?
First of all, first thing I want to say is that she minimized it to where it was like no big deal. The truth is it completely divided our family. I mean, we had a very intense hour-plus long meeting with my parents, and obviously it was super troubling because my father immediately declared Pete to be innocent and didn't even listen to me or Susie's concerns. He just said, I've been falsely accused before. I know what that feels like. And so again, he just went into protect and damage control mode. And, but yeah, we were completely divided as a family for, several weeks.
Yeah. So she's acting like it was not a big deal. From when Jonathan came down the stairs and Pete was behind, Pete was shivering, shaking. Yeah. I really feel like Pete was so vulnerable. And it was me and Rebecca, JW, we were out by the patio and we were terrified. We had never seen Jonathan like this. So we go right down to the basement, and it was one of the most shocking moments of my life, because we go down to the basement. I was expecting, Marcus and Joni to say, whoa, okay, tell us your side. Let's get to, that's what I expected.
Right.
But it wasn't. No. It was immediate. I declare Pete innocent. And I remember the strength in just leaving my body, like, what is happening? Yeah. We felt so helpless. Yeah. We were made to sit down.
Such a traumatic time, and for them to have no empathy and just to completely dismiss it as nothing.
Well, because so before this vacation, to give people a little more context, a lot of other things have been happening at Daystar where a child was scared.
Yeah.
He would enter the room and she would just hide and shake. And, other family members told me he was kissing her when I was in there, and she was terrified. So a lot of incidents were building up to where I finally, when I was alone with Miss Denise Boggs, got to confide in her. And she said, "Oh, wow, this is looking this way. I know you don't want to go there, put your mind there, because you could, you're taking the weight of this family.
Right.
But I remember that conversation, but we have to talk about some things."
Right.
So on this vacation, I was honestly even scared to go, but she said, just be extra vigilant. For people who wonder why we would allow our child on the third floor while we're on the first floor, it was a pattern. Every year on vacation, the girls wanted beachfront rooms. And we were told, this is your sacrifice unto God. Take whatever. So back kitchen room, guest room, whatever room we would just take.
Yeah.
And the second floor had the really nice beachfront rooms. Third floor had the bunk beds. So it made sense for the kids. And, looking back, obviously I would do things differently. But back then we were like, okay, we'll just take this little road facing room, city view room. Now, when she says it was not a big deal, it was a huge deal. We go in that room. First, Marcus doesn't allow Rebecca and JW in there, locks the door. He's talking for 40 minutes about how we are destroying Daystar. The enemy wants to destroy Daystar. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm here for my child. This has nothing to do with Daystar. What is going on? And I kept waiting. Okay, soon I'll have a chance to express all the things that have built up to this point. And, Joni completely detached from me. I could just see her frustration and anger. I felt very disconnected for the first time, really, from her. I thought she would be like a lioness. I really thought she would really have my back. So that was really a hard thing.
Again, I'll jump in here real quick. If you notice the pattern, and since this with the Daystar has come out, and then we've had Robert Morris and the abuse with Cindy Clemenshire, and I'm waiting for word from the Texas legislature that Governor Abbott has signed the bill nullifying NDAs. Again, speaking as a law enforcement officer or a former law enforcement officer, it's a hard habit to break. I still don't understand how an NDA can be used to cover a crime. And I'm going to go back. I've used this before and I'm going to use it again. I'm going to use the analogy. If you want to go commit a murder, say you're in anywhere. Okay. You want to commit a murder. All right. You go and you cap somebody. And then everybody that knows about it, you have them sign a non-disclosure agreement saying they won't talk about it. And they're going to sign it because you done kill one person. What makes them think you won't kill them if they don't sign it? So now you've got a conspiracy there of concealing a crime. I'm just using murder as an example. You've got them concealing a crime. And if there's somebody in Texas watching, maybe you can jump on and comment about it, because now I'm in Kentucky. And unless the laws change, which I don't think it has, an NDA is not going to cover it. So, but we've seen this come out, all these victims that's coming forward now. And that's been the culture, whether it was at Daystar, whether it was at wherever, Michael Brown Church, then Robert Morris, trying to remember all the names of them. Then you got Art Lucier up in Canada, and oh my God, Tommy Tight Pants, almost forgot him. Oh, I just remembered something. I made a comment on X. Has anybody thought that there is a possibility that Pete at Daystar and Tommy Tight Pants, since they both like youngins, both like littles, might have been in cahoots, might have been trading stuff. Be interesting to find out what the police in Ohio find, because they've um, the police has taken all of his electronics, but it's probably they haven't erased it. So that's just a little thing. I wish I'd said that sooner, but y'all think about it. Think about it. Any chance that Pete and Tommy Tight Pants might have been, it's sick. Bottom, it's just so sick. It is. There's just no. I'm gonna go back to this because I'm gonna wind up saying something that won't be very Christian, but I will say this much. When I found out what happened to my daughter, and I will say, had it not been for at the time my wife, well, now my ex, but my wife at the time, I probably would have been in jail because I was going to go kill him. I can understand with Jonathan. And my hat's off to him. Really and truly, my hat's off to him. Because my little girl's abuser, I was going to go kill him. Bottom line. But I'm thankful I didn't. Cooler heads prevailed, and I didn't go do something stupid, because if I had I done that, what would have happened? He'd have been gone. I'd have been in jail, and I wouldn't have been any good to her. As it worked out, I helped her out considerably because she needed her dad. And that was her stepfather that did it. And I won't go into any more. I won't go into any more than that. Yeah, I'll just I'm gonna go back to this. So sorry.
But so Marcus goes on and then yells at everyone but me. He said, "You get out of Daystar, you get out of Daystar." But he didn't yell at me. But then he also pulled up a seat next to Pete and said, I'm with you. So we were just sitting there kind of vulnerable. Then Becca, JW come in the room, and we talk some more, and he says we all need to pray, we need to forgive each other. And we have such just a way of complying always, that we did that. But of course we were in turmoil on the inside. That's why after all of that prayer, we went out on the beach, me, Jonathan, JW, Rebecca, and our kids, and we were just out there for hours trying to process all of this. But see, the way Marcus and Joni did it is that, okay, so we normalize things. You go back to golfing with him tomorrow, you have coffee with her. These things were told to us. And she told me multiple times, I need to apologize to Pete's wife for what I've done. And for the first time, I started to push back and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And thank God Rebecca had called Denise Boggs. We started talking to Denise. If everything was okay and we just apologized, then why did they send us to Denise? They told Denise to get my social media under control because I was escalating, because I was posting scriptures, because I was broken on the inside. Right. And they knew that if we weren't sent to Denise, I would have probably ended up back at the police or done something else out of their control. So that's why we were sent, because I'm living with my child. They're outside the situation. I'm living with a child that's terrified and in fear. So for me, this is my reality for us.
Right. You said that Rebecca and JW were shut out of the room, where Rebecca barged in at one point, right? And she was your ally at that point.
She was very, very vocal, very strong, prayed with us on the beach. And that night, she said, let's go to my dad's room. Let's confront everything. I thought it's useless. After that meeting, I didn't have much hope, but she did. And, he shut us down again. And I just kept holding on to God. You're my father. You're going to set things right. I just never dreamed things would turn out the way they did, because then we, if there's photos of us on the rest of the trip, we did separate dinners and stuff. It was very broken and awkward, but we did our best to just be nice. I was always reaching out to Pete's wife to make sure she's okay, because this is crazy. You know, everything is crazy. Our children, we moved to the movie room right by us, which, you know, Joni wasn't not okay with, but we did move them there. So we come back and we didn't even talk to Pete and his wife because it was so broken for days. And then Pete's wife came and said, "You're breaking my heart. What are you doing?" And I reverted back to my, you know, my nature as I love the Lord. I shouldn't be this way. But they're using now, one of the things that Marcus Rogers said is that they showed him a binder full of like text messages and comments on their Instagram photos of me being loving, kind. Jonathan would golf with them for work, and that's their evidence that nothing happened, and that's pure evil.
Well, and people that respond that way, I feel like they must not understand spiritual abuse and how it works. When you're in this system, breaking free of a system like this, I mean, it's like, in some ways, it's a lot like the wife who's abused, who they say will come back 7 times after leaving. It takes 7 times on average for that woman to finally leave. And so, I mean, if they're using those sorts of things to say, well, you came back and you said nice things, well, so does the abused wife. I mean, it's actually pattern. It's very, very typical. You don't just after one thing, you're done. I mean, it's rare that someone, especially if you've grown up, again, it's not like you came into this system, you know, partway through life. You grew up in it. And so, you know, it's very, very hard.
What she's saying is very accurate. It's 7, you know, an abused spouse will go back 7 times, give or take. You know, I've been involved with so many domestic situations, and for law enforcement, that is the most dangerous situation that we'll ever face. So I understand what they're saying, and I'm sure if there's some out there that have faced that, and I pray it's not triggering you, but that's the culture. That's just, you know, the culture starts with cult, and you know they grew up in this culture. That's what they knew. You know, nothing. They knew nothing else. So, I mean, what are you supposed to do? They were taught, you know, taught to submit, you know, spiritual authority and all that. But then you have spiritual abuse. But something I want to bring up, talking about, you know, we keep talking about a child that's been abused. And this is an offense in the Bible that Jesus has a specific punishment, what it would be better. But whosoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin or to stumble, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. So you're going to, you know, that's pretty self-explanatory there. And, you know, we're talking about a child. We're talking about children. There's one here in particular, a Daystar that we know of. If there's more out there, where there's one victim, there's more. I have no doubt. There's one victim with Pete. There's more. I'd say there's more victims. Now, are they all in this country? Well, maybe, maybe not. I'm praying that the NDAs are, when they're null and void. But then again, there's leverage there at Daystar because somebody holds mortgage. But then again, if they retaliate against a witness, and here's something else, retaliation against a witness. There's tampering and intimidation, but there's, like, say, retaliation. There's laws against that too. So I don't know if Jonathan and Susie would have any recourse for retaliating against a witness or not. That would be something to ask their attorney. But retaliating came to mind, because even if Rebecca and JW speak up, then Daystar holds the mortgage on their house, or at least somebody related to Daystar holds. Is it Daystar Savings and Loan or Daystar Mortgage Company? Who knows? I'm just making up names. They could be, they could still be witnesses. And if they're retaliated against, there's protection there. So that's just a little whatever, just a whatever. I'm going to move on over to another spiritual, hopefully short video here about spiritual abuse that they were talking about in the interview.
And that's their evidence that nothing happened, and that's pure evil.
Well, and people that respond that way, I feel like they must not understand spiritual abuse and how it works. When you're in this system, breaking free of a system like this, I mean, it's like, in some ways, it's a lot like the wife who's abused, who they say will come back 7 times after leaving. It takes 7 times on average for that woman to finally leave. And so, I mean, if they're using those sorts of things to say, well, you came back and you said nice things, well, so does the abused wife. I mean, it's actually pattern. It's very, very typical. You don't just, after one thing, you're done. I mean, it's rare that someone, especially if you've grown up, again, it's not like you came into this system, partway through life. You grew up in it. And so, it's very, very hard to break free.
And yeah, not only are we all family, but we all work together. We're in the same building during work hours. And
Have to get along.
My mother and father basically preached into us like family unity is like on the level of like godliness almost. Like you've just got to have family unity above everything else. So with that, it's like you have to put behind whatever concerns or struggles you might have, and you just have to work towards unity, because that's what God would want.
Well, and then the next day, Joni declared that God told her, correct?
Yes. At breakfast, she just said it, and I was in absolute shock, because I said if God was going to say anything to anyone, it would be me. I've been on my face before God. I have been on my face.
And what did she say exactly? She said God told her that.
She said, I prayed and I asked God, this is something I really need to know. And he told me, nope, he's innocent. Yeah. Pete is innocent. And then Marcus did, yay, yeah. Everything, we can move on to good times again. Yeah. And that sat very badly with my heart, because this is another thing. I don't know if I've mentioned this to anyone or not, but a pastor's wife that I hadn't talked to in many, many years, she texted me that very morning after that saying, all the women of our church got together for a prayer morning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they don't know our children or anything. And she said, we all felt on our heart to pray for your daughter. And she said her name. And
completely out of the blue.
I was like in shock. I showed Jonathan the text, and I was like, God is with us. We're not alone. God is with us.
And that was like God saying, like, I see it, I'm with you.
I'm with you. Yeah. And I would love to later, as you lead, I'd love to get to the part of, because she mentioned, it's so random that we're bringing it up now and that you're sensationalizing things. We have a very clear answer as to why this has come up now.
So what's interesting is that this whole idea of going to Denise, when Joni talks about it with Marcus Rogers, she said that you guys went there for counseling. So I want to play that and then talk about that and why you really went there.
And then after that vacation, we decided that it'd just be good to let everyone maybe go and have some counseling to make sure we're good. And so actually both couples did that, just to, you know, if you can, put an end to it and make sure everything was covered. And so they did that and got a good report, and that was the end of it. It was just kind of a crazy thing.
She's calling this counseling here. I want to read, this is Daystar's initial statement on November 19th. There was an internal investigation about the matter you referenced when it was first raised at a family retreat in 2021, which concluded with no wrongdoing found nor evidence provided that corroborated the allegation, according to their statement. So the first statement from Daystar was that there was an investigation. Now we're hearing Joni say there was counseling, that you went, and it was all good afterwards. So what really happened?
So what really happened is they told us to go to meet with Miss Denise, and me, Susie, and our kids. We went up there.
Denise Boggs from Living Waters.
Our family counselor. And that's where she met with us all, heard the whole story, shared her concerns. And then she said, okay, I need to bring in this forensic counselor, Debbie Leonard. And she specializes in identifying, perpetrators of this type of abuse. Worked for the police department of North Carolina for many years doing that. So she's great at her job. She brought her in. Our daughter, she wasn't really speaking too much, but she did trigger some things that caused Debbie to think that Pete, is looking like he needs to really be interviewed and go through the hard questions to determine, his guilt. I remember she did like a drawing. That was one of the big
She
tells.
did drawings, but she was most importantly, she was terrified. She was hiding under chairs. Yeah. The behavior was really, really sad. And Debbie, remember telling me, saying, I can't even interview this child, but clearly this child has been through.
Clearly had the signs of someone that had been abused. Yeah. And so,
whose job is it to fight to the very end? Her parents. It's our job. We have to do this.
And she made a very strong statement to me and Susie. Yeah. And it was, so if I do this investigation into Pete and I find him to be guilty, will you do the right thing and prosecute? And we both emphatically said, yes, we will do the right thing and prosecute.
And then that got back to Marcus somehow. And that's why that email came that we shouldn't be prosecution, judge, jury. But so Debbie was very clear. And this was not just counseling that this other couple went for. Marcus and Joni didn't even know that Debbie was going to be there. I'm so thankful.
Thankfully, Denise did that on her own.
Yeah, I'm very thankful. Yeah. So when they sent them there, then Debbie was supposed to do this thing. We find out that the wife talked the whole time, didn't let him talk, which was exactly what happened in that room that day. When we got in that room, the wife did all the talking about Pete and all these excuses. Pete sat there quiet. And so the same thing happened. And so, but Debbie wasn't allowed to talk to us from that point anymore. And then Marcus took control and told Jonathan.
Yeah, well, my parents told Denise they want to shut down the investigation and to not document anything else related to this. Just shut it down. This is what they told Denise. So Denise told Debbie, hey, they're not going to do anything more on this issue, so you can just drop it. And so that was the end of that. We had no idea about that conversation. We had no idea. All I knew, and again, we were waiting for our daughter to have an outcry to name Pete. We don't know when that will happen. But I can definitively say, without a shadow of a doubt, my father sat me and my brother-in-law down in his office. This is probably about a week after we had gone. And he said, Pete he went to this forensic counselor and he got cleared and he is innocent. And therefore, you need to submit and move on. And if you can't, you need to find another job. And so, again, we did our best to move forward in that
if he is cleared,
relationship of, just trusting that my father would not lie to me And
Can I say the reason he had Jonathan and JW in that room is because the four of us said, because Rebecca and JW were so strong, saying, if you prosecute, we're with you all the way. And
yeah,
we were so thankful that they were so strong with us at that point.
and GW actually wrote a long letter to Miss Denise with all of his concerns about Pete and all the different interactions that he's noticed that had concerned him.
I hope and I pray that JW and Rebecca will speak, because these two are the ones that hold kind of the missing piece to so much of this. And so I hope they will come forward. I know there's an awful lot of pressure on them. I know too, because you sent it to me, both of them, their mortgages are held by Daystar. I mean, the amount of control financially over your finances, your career, your family. I mean, it's unbelievable how many, talk about tentacles. I mean, there is no, leaving and cleaving when you get married. It's like you guys are enmeshed, and it's hard to get out.
Right.
Yeah.
There's something really bizarre that Joni mentions in her interview with Marcus Rogers, this whole grocery incident.
Oh, yeah.
There had been some very peculiar things that have happened at this particular trip. I remember when we were at the grocery store, all the family was there, because when we always go to the grocery store and get food for breakfast and that kind of thing. And I remember Susie was standing in line, and she began to murmur under her breath and start talking about a man that was behind her. And she was getting angrier and angrier, and we were like, what, what's going on? And she, she said, he was looking at me, in the store. And the man is like on his phone, not knowing what in the world she's saying or doing. We were just trying to calm her down. So it was just a weird dynamic that was going on with her from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't appreciate my mom
It's okay.
painting the picture that Susie's a little crazy.
Okay.
That's just
It's okay.
a total distraction of trying to take away from the main story to hurt her credibility.
It's funny because a few friends texted me, they saw this stuff, and they were like, we don't know if we should be upset or we should laugh. This is laughable.
It's laughable.
But the truth is, when I first heard it, it was obviously painful, because it's such a stupid, that none of this happened. She's making up things. Again, I don't want to keep pulling it back to that, but it remains that all these words that you say to paint me in a picture so you can for self-preservation, you have to answer to our King Jesus for this. And I understand her mentality. Her thought, the way she justifies all of this is, you know what, I'll say this now because it helps me now, and later I'll repent and I'll be okay. And it doesn't work like that. That's manipulating God. You cannot manipulate God. I hope and pray she takes responsibility and repents for that. It is not okay.
So nothing happened at the grocery store?
No, I don't. This is crazy. I feel weird even dignifying that with a response. Me imagining a man was looking at me. So because I saw Pete following her, they need to make this, that I'm just imagining things. Crazy.
If that's true, that would be definition of gaslighting.
Now you see why I said I had to send Jonathan up there, because they were said to Susie.
Thankfully, I was the one that witnessed it. Otherwise, they may have denied that even happened.
He wasn't even there.
Yeah.
He was in the basement.
All right.
That's also called discrediting a witness. The more ridiculous you can make a complaining witness sound, the less credible their claim. So Susie was very wise in sending Jonathan upstairs. That was a wise decision. And just looking at this spiritual abuse that's going on is, I don't even know hardly even what to say about it. It's just horrendous. And this is supposed to be a worldwide television network that's supposed to be preaching the gospel. And when you're in a situation like that, when you're in a network, you better have your act together, because you're representing the kingdom. Now, nobody's perfect. Everybody messes up, but still you're representing the kingdom. somebody turns on Daystar, or whether Daystar, whatever other network it is, they at least expect to see individuals that at least are putting their best foot forward. And this whole, I know I've been spending a lot of time on their interview with the abuse, because that's paramount. But I'm going to jump in here to, I'm going to jump forward here a little bit. But you keep hearing, Joni saying that I believe it was Joni saying that God told her that Pete was innocent. Well, let's remember this verse right here that Paul wrote to the Corinthians. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works. So was that really God you were hearing from? Or was that Satan's whispering in your ear? But then you're under such a spirit of deception, you wouldn't know right from wrong, up from down, inside from outside. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go, I'm going to jump here to, I'm going to jump to Doug real quick. And I think it's important we include him in on it, because I honestly believe Doug is the catalyst in all this that brought the deceiving and the deluding spirit in to Daystar, and the spirit that's destroying Daystar. So this is still interview with Julie Royce, the Royce Report. And I fast forwarded from the timeline, but you can go, if you're interested in seeing the entire video, this is on the Royce Report on our YouTube channel. And it's there's a 2-part interview with Jonathan and Susie. And I believe this is from part 2. But the interviews are they're like 2 hours long, and I didn't want to run that. I run longer than what I was going to, but there's so much here to get in that I think it's important that we do get it in. And because I'm answering to Perry Stone what he's saying, that we don't know what we're talking about. And I'm putting together a case for you that I do. And again, I'm going to repeat it. You're more than welcome to come on my show with me as a guest. Joni Lamb, you're welcome to come on my show as a guest. And I'm not going to be a Marcus Rogers. I'm not going to send you questions in advance to for you and your minions to approve. You come on, you're going to get the questions straightforward. I'm not going to come to Daystar. I used to want to come to Daystar. I used to, not anymore. But you can come on. I'll send you a link that you can come on with me, and I'll push the interview, and I'll push it that I'm having you on as a guest. So you're welcome to come on. My email is joel2@joel2revival.org, or you can message me on Facebook, X, or YouTube. You can private message me. Same with you, Perry. More than welcome to come on with me. So I'm going to hop on here. And if y'all would like, subscribe, share, helps the algorithm. I forgot to start my scroll earlier, but hey, better late than never. So here's the part of the interview about the letter Denise Boggs wrote regarding Doug Weiss.
Denise Boggs sent you. Again, this is the woman who has counseled Doug and Lisa Weiss. So she knows them rather well, spent several days with both of them.
Right.
She sends you a letter, and that letter is pretty alarming. She doesn't mince words. It's a very strong letter. And I would love for you to read that letter.
Yeah. So Denise sent this letter to me, Susie, Rachel, Josh, Rebecca, Jonathan Weiss. So the 3 kids and their siblings, and just said, this is a letter from Denise to the Lamb family. She says, "Dear Lamb family, it is with a heavy heart that I write this letter. I met with Joni before the baby shower this past week, and I was so alarmed as I listened to her talk. It was as if I didn't know her. It appears she has come under a spirit of deception. She shared something Doug said to her that was so degrading for a woman of God, but she laughed as she told me. She seemed flattered by it, which is not the Joni Lamb I once knew. If you give in to seductive flattery, you are being seduced and deceived. In spiritual warfare, you know the enemy by what the demonic spirit produces. A spirit of deception produces deception in a person who is under attack. A spirit of deception operates through flattery to first gain access. A man will use flattery to find the weak area in the soul of a woman. And once a woman is under the deception of flattery, she can be manipulated. Galatians 5 says, "Do not have fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them." When darkness is operating, we have 2 options: to either laugh at it and fellowship with it, or confront it. This is why flattery precedes deception. If a person gives in to flattery, they become trapped and deceived. The flattery gives the enemy full access to your weakest area. I voiced my concerns to Joni about Doug at the very beginning when they started dating, but she refused to hear me and defended him. This is when I became alarmed. I knew she had come under a spirit of deception. The things I warned her about were the things that she once voiced strong convictions about. When a person is under a spirit of deception, they begin to change right before your eyes, and it's as if you don't know them anymore. They say things that they would have never said before. This is why I want to voice my concerns for Daystar. This is an attack against Daystar. Marcus and Joni set such a high standard for Daystar over the years that the viewers will not be fooled. They will be able to see the deception. As viewers begin to see the change in Joni, they will know that something is off and viewing will drop drastically. They've been under the anointing of Marcus Lamb for many years, so they won't be deceived, but they will know something is wrong, and they will discern the difference in the new leadership. The Daystar family has been under the leadership of Marcus Lamb, who stood for truth and righteousness. The Lord has shown me what the enemy is using Doug to do. If Joni falls for it and hands over leadership to Doug, the Daystar viewing audience will see through his deception. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He is of no caliber for such a high platform. He's being used by the enemy to take Daystar down. Joni didn't endorse divorce until she came under this deception, and using the Daystar platform, the enemy has successfully mocked the marriage covenant using one of the strongest Christian TV networks in the nation. My perspective of Doug came after spending several days with him. I voiced to her that the issues in the first marriage needed to be confronted before going into this marriage. Your mom agreed that they would hear me out at first, but once Jimmy Evans fully approved of Doug, she told me that they would not be interested in talking to me. After spending 3 days with Doug, I am fully aware of the deep-rooted issues that caused Doug's first marriage to fail. The alarming thing is, what took the first marriage down is casually being embraced. When I met with your mom on the Friday before the shower, she rehearsed all the people's names again who were endorsing the marriage to Doug. Since I know the root issues, I see the warning signs that others don't see. Jimmy Evans knows Doug according to what Doug wants him to know. So therefore, Jimmy Evans is endorsing this marriage without having the full knowledge of what really happened to the first marriage. How can you know he's safe for Joni if you don't know the root issues behind what really happened? Joni's well-being, her health, her integrity, and the family legacy, and the millions of people who trust Daystar are all at risk. We need to pray for Jimmy Evans that he will realize what the stakes are and that how they're so high for the kingdom of God. I will be praying for each of you to have discernment and to not push the minimize button when you get a check. You have been disciplined for years by Marcus, and I'm praying for the sake of Daystar that you will put all past hurts aside and come together as one. That's the only way you'll be able to get your mom to see the truth. I'm willing to meet with all of you and speak on your behalf with your mom. I love you all, Denise. Okay, so after that, we saw that letter. I jumped into action mode. I got all 6 of us on a phone call together and said, hey, we need to meet mom and talk to her about this. So the next day, went into Daystar, told my mom, hey, I'd like to meet with you, have a family meeting. She said, okay, we can do one after the show. So after the show, she came up, we met in her office, and she literally said, hey, I've got to go fly off to New York with Doug. So I'll give you each 1 minute to speak. So we each said our piece for 1 minute. And then after that, literally, she just said, I hear you, but all I hear coming from you is a spirit of fear. And she pointed at us and said, fear, 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 fear. And quickly rushed out the door to fly out to New York. So there wasn't even any type of a real conversation or consideration of our concerns. She was like, my mind's made up, and that's it.
So did this have anything at all to do with the fact that Doug was becoming the co-host? Now, obviously you had issues with Doug, period.
Yeah.
But him becoming the co-host, were you concerned about that? And if you were, was it because you were being supplanted, or was it because this is a man that you've been warned about as far as his character?
No, this purely had to do with having the fear of God and protecting Daystar's integrity. When we got that letter from Denise, knowing that she had counseled with Doug, with Lisa, and with my mother, and knew all the details that she did, and she clearly saw the spirit of deception that was on my mother, I knew that the best thing to do would be to sound the alarm and let her know, hey, Mom, this is not why. I really ask that you reconsider this relationship, and we just really just shared our hearts as to why this would not be the best move. And that was it. We weren't talking about position or anything like that at that time.
That must have been incredibly difficult. I mean, to have a loved one and to get that kind of warning. So to have her heading into a marriage with someone that you had that many reservations about. But she did go ahead and get married June 10th, 2023. I know there were concerns about who's going to be in the wedding and who's not going to be in the wedding. You guys ended up going, even though you really were concerned about it.
Yeah. Our pastor told us to go, so we went, and we were uncomfortable. I just felt like this is a big mistake, but we always wanted to show her support. Never challenged her authority, never did any of the things that she's accused us of.
Yeah.
And even, we're talking about this now only because she's painting a false picture.
Right.
Otherwise, we weren't wanting to go air her dirty laundry about her marriage. She can do what she wants, and she has to face the consequences for it. But when you say that, when she tells the world that we changed and flipped, that's the only reason we're addressing it.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't want to keep on going through this for no reason. It's just that she's deceiving people to say that everything switched in our relationship towards Doug and liking Doug only because we found out that he was going to be installed as a co-host. That's totally false.
So then they go on a honeymoon, and the honeymoon has become quite an issue too.
Yeah.
There's some things she said in this last interview, though, that for me were like, oh, wow, she just said that. So I'm very curious. So I'm going to play it, and then we'll talk about it.
The honeymoon, that was the other thing. At Daystar, we use credit cards, and there are points that are used. And the executives at Daystar are allowed to use those points. Jonathan, in fact, used those points when we went on vacation for our family retreat. He knew we used those points. So
the same thing that they're saying you did, he was doing as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was fine with using for the family those points. So when the honeymoon came up, they allowed me to use the points, and but there weren't enough points to cover the whole honeymoon, so there was a cash amount. Well, then I reimbursed, and Doug, we reimbursed Daystar that amount, okay? And I do that every quarter. Any personal expenses I reimburse. And I mean, I'll just say this, I give to Daystar, and over the last couple of years, I've given personally several $100,000 to Daystar because I believe in it, and I want to help Israel and all the things that we do. So that is the honeymoon. People say, well, you took a nice honeymoon. Well, I did take a nice honeymoon, and because Marcus had been successful with real estate, and we had our own wealth that we had accumulated from just his good business acumen. And when he died, he took good care of me as well. So yes, I'm not going to.
Outside of Daystar, when you say business.
Outside of Daystar.
Yes, ma'am.
And so everyone knew Marcus's business acumen and how brilliant he was, and I can't tell you how God used him to build a reservoir here at Daystar that we're completely out of debt, and to God be the glory for that. But he also set up a business account and a ministry account. So any donations go into the ministry account, and that only goes to preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. And the business account pays salaries and any type of business. So when people say, you know, Daystar, are we upright? Absolutely. And we have an outside accounting firm that does an audit every year. And so that was very important to Marcus. So yes, I did use the points, but the overage, not one penny came from Daystar. I paid that. Doug paid that.
Well, Joni, I'm going to pop in here for just a second. Well, Joni, if there's an outside accounting firm comes in every year and does an audit of Daystar's books, then why don't you publicize it? Why don't you show everybody where the money's going? I mean, all the real books. Why don't you do that? I know your donations are down. You're down millions of dollars in donations. Just recently, one of your longtime donors, I believe, she'd been a donor for a partner for like 20 some odd years, and she's demanding her money back. I don't blame her. We were partners. My wife and I were partners of Daystar for probably 6 or 7 years, until all this happened. And then we shut it off. I said, no. I saw what was going on, which all my donations were earmarked for Israel. So the thing of it is how do I know that my donations, or our donations were going to Israel, going to the IDF? I know JW runs the Israel part of it. But how do we know all of our donations were going to Israel? You don't make any, you have no accountability to the IRS. You don't file a 990. You don't publicize any kind of books or any kind of accounting. So how do we know? You hide under a church. You're not, as I said before, you're not a church. You're a TV network. So I'll hush and go back to this, but I had to jump in because it just absolutely burns me up that y'all are what's wrong. Y'all are what's wrong with televangelists. You know, Oral Roberts, the father of prosperity gospel. Then his kids, Kenneth Copeland and Jesse Duplantis and Perry Stone. All of them? Yeah, okay. Well, I'll go back. Sorry, y'all. I'll go back to this.
A couple of things that I just noticed right off the back. one, how much she gives to Daystar is irrelevant. That's really has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, so she was deceptive that she falsely attributed that I would use points, Daystar points for anything, for something, which I've never used Daystar points for anything. Daystar, first of all, the points that Daystar gets from credit cards are an income that should be for Daystar. It's not a fund that should be able to use by executives. Like, that's not its purpose. So, but they would use the points in the past for the family executive retreat. So, in that case, I could see how that is justified, because we all work together and we have conversations and bonding that happens. But this is different. This is a honeymoon. This is not a family executive retreat. This is a honeymoon. And so I objected. I said, no, this is not right. I don't think Daystar should pay for this. And I obviously raised that at the board meeting, but the other board member, Tom Callender, decided to gift it to my mother.
And just to add, there were multiple times where this was Jonathan asked her, and it was like taunting. She would like laugh and mock about, no, I'm going to do what I want. So it's just very, very hard to like watch that, and she comes off all genuine and sad about it. Well, it's not that at all. At all. It was a very prideful, I'll do what I want thing.
Yeah, very prideful. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's so absurd. 100 grand honeymoon? Really? 100 grand. Given the timeline, there was some of the video I cut out just for time's sake. But I'm going to go back in. I'll just jump back into it a little bit as far as the timeline of their relationship is, because she had was trying to remember if I had the, and I don't. Well, my apologies. If y'all remember supposedly the 19-hour phone call that Joni had with Doug Weiss the night Marcus died, November 30th of 2021, supposedly 19 hours. Ladies, would you, even if your husband was a counselor, and men too, well, look, I'll leave in the books, would you allow your spouse to be on the phone for 19 hours? I mean, really? Again, Doug counseled Marcus and Joni after Marcus's affair. The Joni let us, in the book, and I'm not going to waste our time getting the book and looking up the chapter on the affair, because the way she made it sound was like it was a one-time thing, not 7 years. And I'll put it like this. Yes, I've been married before. And there's a reason why that a spouse is going to go looking elsewhere. Sometimes it's the person. Now, it's men and women. But, there's a reason. And if Joni was, let's just say, not the nicest person to him, I'll just leave it at that, then, yeah, you can go, you go seek attention and affection elsewhere. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody needs to be loved. And if you think about it for a minute, So I'm not saying that was the case. I don't know. I wasn't there. I know who does know. The kids. So, maybe, some point they might speak up and say something about it. But yeah, that's my, you know, they he counseled them and he got to know what makes them tick. And just like Denise Boggs was saying, he's a master manipulator. He knows, my guess is a womanizer. Now, was he doing anything? I don't know. I really don't care personally. That's between him and his ex. But what I find odd is that his ex is still working there at Heart to Heart Counseling. I bet that's a wonderful excursion when he goes back to Colorado Springs for whatever he goes back to Colorado Springs for. Y'all can read into my snicker. Because I'm trying to keep this a semi-family show. But that's, there's questions. And if he did it, if he was fooling around, put it like this, if he was fooling around on Lisa with Joni, then I can almost guarantee you that he's going to fool around on Joni with somebody else. Because chances are she's not going to change her behavior. I mean, for a time, maybe for a time she will, but, I'm kind of speculating, but I'm going from past experiences. There's a reason that I'm divorced. I have been divorced. So I got one more clip here of Jonathan and Susie, and I've got a email that a viewer sent me, that it was a email they sent to the Daystar, to Joni.
Responsibility, strong person like that, and everyone knows this.
But what if you are?
Right?
Right. I sit there and I listen to the way that she talks to you. Again, condescending. You don't have a degree, or you haven't preached.
Oh, by the way, I have a Bible degree.
Yeah, and I went to Oral
Excuse
Roberts
me.
University.
What degree does your mother have?
High school diploma.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this condescension that she has towards you, and I don't mean to get sidetracked, but I read Ephesians 5, and the husband's supposed to love their wife as their church, as Christ loved the church. Does God love his wife by not listening to her, or by making sure, is he so insecure that he has to make all the decisions because God forbid that he's influenced by his wife? I mean, just the tone and the manner of all of this is repulsive. It really is repulsive. And to use that against you, to make something so personal as your relationship with your spouse, and to bring that into this, I mean, it's so hitting below the belt, and it's so not true. And it's very bothersome.
Well, see, that's what we lived with, the divide and conquer. Always keep us separate. No, tell me secrets. Don't tell Jonathan. And I'm at fault for always complying. And so it's funny that the thing she's using as me as controlling is the exact weakness she used in me, that I was not that at all. That's why that part hurts a lot more.
Yeah.
And then to say that Marcus, well, whereas Marcus was always so loving and kind. And then again, the way she would control Jonathan is it always emasculate him. You're weaker, and try to make him into some insecure thing. But he didn't, and I'm thankful for that. He was always secure.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of irony, isn't there, that there's a woman telling the man that he can't be controlled by the woman while the woman tries to control the man?
I know. It's like she's projecting what she's doing to me onto Susie.
Well, also one more thing. Now you know, as of today, Marcus Rogers did a horrible hit piece video calling me horrible things, Potiphar's wife, and saying I have a bad spirit. He is being the mouthpiece of Joni. Joni spent the last
My
year.
mother has gone around to tell all these ministers that she's had on and telling them the narrative that Susie has a Jezebel spirit. And so a lot of them believe her. She's very convincing. She's great at telling stories, and she's painted that narrative. And so now a lot of these major ministers are viewing even us stepping out and sharing our story as like, oh, Susie was mad or disgruntled, and so she's a Jezebel spirit, and they're trying to destroy the ministry. So that's the narrative that's being crafted that my mother has shared with a lot of the big names in the evangelical world.
And we took a whole year of just being on standby while she told all these people not being able to do anything. I'm thankful to have a voice now, but it's like God has to be my defender.
And so Marcus Rogers, he has talked to a lot of these pastors, a lot that my mother has spoken to, and they're all saying that Susie has the spirit that's driving her. And he's saying that I, as a man, need to, man up and take control of the situation and my wife. And it's like, it's just crazy. Like, he's totally believing the narrative that my mom has painted. And now he sees us as the ones that are, basically, he said, we need to repent because of what we're doing, which is just crazy.
Well, I'll just say for myself, when I hear somebody call anybody Jezebel, I check out. I do. I mean, it's become just a pejorative word, disparagement that we use, and it's being thrown around, and we think we can, project these spirits of this, that, and the other thing. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong. We're labeling people that God hasn't labeled. And some people should, when they do these things, should have just some sort of sense of humility and fear of God. Because this is someone that God said, if you call a fool, you're in danger of hell. And we're going around labeling them as Jezebels. I mean, it's horrible. And you know what's interesting too, and I don't want to get on the misogyny thing, but it's funny that there's really, nobody goes around really talking about the Ahab spirit. I mean, they do a little bit, but the amount of times, I'd love to just do a study on the amount of times Jezebel is used, but not Ahab. Apparently women have more of a problem with spirits than, it's so out of control and it's so bad. I want to make sure that we go to the whole bribery thing, because this has to be addressed. The email, again, and I did address this in an article, but I feel like people miss this. They don't read carefully.
Okay, I cut it after that rather than going through the bribery. But she was talking about the Ahab, the Jezebel spirit. Well, we do have an Ahab and a Jezebel spirit operating a Daystar. But if you remember, Ahab was more of he was a wicked ruler, but Jezebel was the one that was actually pretty much running the show. And there was in first, I'll bring this. It's easier when I bring up the, there we go. When I add this, because, Ahab wanted a parcel of land that belonged to a guy named Naboth. And I thought I had the entire and rather than because Naboth Ahab went to Naboth and said, give me your vineyard that I may have, make sure this is open. Yeah. I like looking sometimes. I'm on a different screen. Give me your vineyard that he may use it for a vegetable garden because it is near next to my house. For I will give you a vineyard better than it. Or if it seems good to you, I will give you its worth in money. But Naboth didn't want to. Naboth didn't want to do it. The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my father to you. So Ahab goes back to the house, and he was all brokenhearted, displeased because Naboth said no. And so he tells Jezebel. And then Jezebel, because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite, said to him, give me your vineyard for money, or else if it pleases you, I will give you another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give you my vineyard. So Jezebel, his wife, said to him, you now exercise authority over Israel. Arise, eat food, and let your heart be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. So she wrote a letter in Ahab's name, sealed it with his seal, and sent the letter to the elders of the nobles that were dwelling in the city of Naboth. And basically, the short version of it, she had an innocent man. Naboth was an innocent man. She had him killed. So Ahab could get his land to put an herb garden in. So there's the Ahab and the Jezebel spirit. Ahab was kind of a weak, kind of and Jezebel was the rip roaring, screaming demon. So we've got an Ahab and Jezebel spirit working right now, going on at Daystar. And where Miss Royce was talking about hadn't heard too much about the Ahab spirit. Well, that's probably why, because Ahab was kind of my mother-in-law refers to him as milk toast. My mother-in-law, she's an awesome lady. She really is. Okay. So what I'm gonna go to, I had a viewer that sent me a letter or sent me an email that I can get it up here. Sent me an email that they sent to Daystar, and it was a word from the Lord. And when I read it, it was like, oh wow, oh wow, this was, this is pretty powerful. And obviously, I redacted the name out of it, and the address and everything. Basically, I just copied it and did some copy and paste. So I have to go over here. Pardon the header, but I just did a copy and paste on it. And says Joni, I'm emailing you because God has given me a word for you. Marcus dying on November 30th was by design. I'm sure that you're aware of the significance of that date. God revealed to me that from August 2021, it was 3 months and 21 days until he died. Those behaviors culminated, causing judgment. If you remember, August 2021 was the beach house incident. 3 months, 21 days. 21, obviously divided by 3 is 7 or 777, the number of completion. 7 Three, as you know, is significant in the Bible. Jonah was 3 days in the belly of the fish as punishment. Just as Moses disobeyed God and died, this was a judgment. God is shaking the church and cleaning house. He's raising up a new generation of pastors. The statements made by Jimmy Evans are heretical and blasphemy. I will set my face against that man and make him a sign and a proverb. I will cut him off from the midst of my people, and then you shall know that I am the Lord. And if the prophet is induced to speak anything, I, the Lord, have induced that prophet, and I will stretch out my hand against him and destroy him from among my people Israel. And they shall bear their iniquity, and the punishment of the prophet shall be the same as the punishment of the one who inquired, that the house of Israel may no longer stray from me, nor be profaned any more with all their transgressions, that they may be my people and I may be their God, says the Lord God. Ezekiel 14:8-11. There's demonic influence and deception and oppression in your heart and your life. You and others speak of these words in part to justify your actions on divorce and remarriage. But to the rest, I, Paul, not the Lord, say, if any brother has a wife who does not believe and she is willing to live with him, let him not divorce her. If a woman who has a husband who does not believe and he is willing to live with her, let her not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but now they are holy. But if the unbeliever departs, let him depart. A brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God has called us to peace. 1 Corinthians 7:12-15. Jesus spoke these words. He said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her is divorced commits adultery. Matthew 19:8-9. The Pharisees came and asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? Testing him, he answered and said to them, what did Moses command you? They said, Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and dismiss her. And Jesus answered and said to them, because of the hardness of your heart, he wrote this precept. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. In the house, his disciples also asked him again about the same matter. So he said to them, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. If a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. For the Lord God of Israel says that he hates divorce, for it covers one's garment with violence, says the Lord of hosts. Therefore take heed to your spirit that you do not deal treacherously. Malachi 2:16. Except divorce for sexual immorality, a divorced man or woman must remain unmarried or be reconciled to their respective husband or wife. The Lord your God is giving you a season to repent, to correct the wrongs. Justice must be served, and he will restore. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. But if you turn away and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set before you, and go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will uproot them from my land which I have given them. And this house which I have sanctified for my name I will cast out of my sight, and will make it a proverb and a byword among all peoples. As for this house which is exalted, everyone who passes by it will be astonished and say, why has the Lord done this to this land and this house? Then they will answer, because they forsook the the Lord God of their fathers, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, and embraced other gods and worshipped them and served them. Therefore he has brought all this calamity on them. For nothing is secret and will not be revealed, nor anything hidden that will not be known and come to light. The gods and idols you are worshiping as money and power. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name have done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. The Lord your God is very displeased with your behavior and does not recognize your involvement with Doug Weiss. You are in a position of power and influence, using that to lord, quote unquote, lord over and control others. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You have left your first love. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, repent and do your first works, or else I will come to you quickly and remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent. This is the word of the Lord. That's, I read that and it was like, oh my goodness. How much more power? That was a word from the Lord. Joni has an opportunity to turn it around. But unless she does, it's, there's a spirit of destruction on Daystar. And there's a spirit of destruction on the church. And Jesus is returning for a bride without spot or blemish. And they were talking about in the last video about the church. Paul writes in Ephesians, therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. And husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word. Jesus doesn't abuse the church. Jesus is not into abuse. I'm sorry this has gone longer than what I thought it would, but there was so much to cover here. Jesus, we've looked at spiritual abuse, sexual abuse. The church is rife with sexual abuse, with sexual immorality. The church is being used as a hunting ground by perverts. And it just uh, it just tears my heart out and just tears my spirit that children go to church to learn about Jesus and learn the love of Jesus, not to be groomed by a freak or a pervert. And Daystar platforms protects and platforms an alleged pedophile. and it's, Daystar's lost 23, at least 23 programmers, with probably more on the way. They're down millions of dollars in funds. Well, if they're down millions of dollars in funds, sell some of those properties. And that new property that we saw that you're building a new house on it. What's that? Y'all's new love den? Your little love castle, your little sin den. That rhymes a little bit better. It's just, the whole thing is just horrendous. And I don't know, I know there's new viewers watching. Obviously, please like, subscribe, share. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe, then you got to go up and hit that little bell and put to all. Otherwise, it just defaults to personalized. And if you hit all, then you'll get alerts when new content's released. I try and do at least one, if not two videos a week. I don't just put something out just to put something out. I want content in it. I want a meaning. And I just felt today was necessary to answer to Perry Stone for what, his barking dogs. And I've kind of left him alone a little bit, as far as I'm not going to go back and bring up things that were forgiven. I'm not going to bring up unforgiven sin. That's wrong. That's a sin. But if you hear us talking about Jesus, and who is this Jesus? Well, Jesus sacrificed himself for you to have eternal life. And you can have eternal life. All you have to do is cry out to him. And it's as simple as just saying, Jesus, I need you. But I would be amiss if I didn't lead you in a prayer of salvation that you can join an eternal life and have eternal life. And then afterwards, I'll give you some direction. What you've heard me talking about here and what you've seen is not the way the church is supposed to be. This is totally opposite. What you're seeing is Satan running amok. He knows he has but a short time. Not as short as it's going to be, but it's getting short. There's nothing that needs to happen for Jesus to return. In that day, in that day and time, no one knows but the Father himself, but God himself. And you want to be ready. So if you want to have eternal life, if you want to accept Jesus, then just repeat after me. Mean it from your heart. You'll say, Lord Jesus, I know that I'm a sinner and I've made many mistakes. But I'm asking you to forgive me. Come into my heart right now. Be the Lord of my life and the Savior of my soul. I believe you died on the cross and you were raised from the dead. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for forgiving me. And thank you for saving me. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. And it's that simple. That simple. The most important next step that you can do is to get into a spirit-filled, Bible-believing church. That's the most important thing, because you're, a baby Christian and you need to learn. And that's where you're going to learn. If you're not sure where to go, then email me. My email is joel2@joel2revival.org, or you can message me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or X. Send me a private message. Don't put your address, or anything where you are, where you are out there in the public. And I'll help you find a church in your area. I failed to say I'm a member of the Church of God, just like Perry Stone is. I should have said that earlier. But that's one reason why I'm saying something directed to Perry Stone. And I learned a lot from Perry. I really did. So I don't want to get off on that. Email me, message me, and I will be more than happy to help you find a church in your area that you can go to, and tell them that you prayed this prayer, and that you need a church home. You need to learn, and they'll be more than happy to accommodate you. So thank you all so much for being with me today. I'm sorry this went on a whole lot longer than what I thought it would, but it was necessary because there was so much material, so very much material that we needed to get through. And again, please like, subscribe, share. If you're hit the like button, wherever you're at, YouTube, X, Rumble, Instagram, please hit that like button, share it, tell your friends about it. And I look forward to seeing you on the next trip. So again, just remember, Jesus loves you. Jesus died for you. God is still in control. And, Satan will make all kinds of noise. He's the barking dog. But we're children of the Most High God. And I'm so thankful for that. Again, thank you all so very much. Thank you so much for being here and being with me. And you all have an awesome, blessed day. In Jesus' name. See you next time.